What's up, guys? It's Matt from I Edit Podcasts, and today I'm taking you through another editing tutorial inside of Adobe Audition. Today, we're going through the Ask the A&Ps podcast, episode number 55. And this one's particularly challenging because the way it works is there's 3 hosts, and they bring in callers to ask about airplane repair questions. The tricky part is that the callers can't be recorded on a separate track. It's just the way that the episode is recorded. We've tried to do it differently. It's just the technical drawback, the nature of the beast, as they say. So my job is to go through and make sure that the voices of the hosts don't overlap the voice of the caller. And if they do, I have to leave them on the same track. It's just how it is. So without further ado, let's just jump into it and I'll explain things as we go. All right, so if you did not watch my last editing tutorial, I have a little bit of a wider screen, so it's going to look a little bit scrunched in the final edit. That's why it might look a little bit compressed from left to right. And then I also went through and restored all of the audio clips, made sure there's no background, not too much background noise, plosives, mouth clicks, that kind of stuff. We used the Isotope suite for that, the plugins for Adobe Audition. So I've already done that. If you are looking for a walkthrough on what tools I use for that, maybe preferences I use for Adobe Audition, shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, you can go check out my last tutorial. I'll leave a link for it up in the top right. But without further ado, let's just drag these in and see how things work. So first off, you can see I have all of my tracks labeled: Mike, Paul, Colleen, mix, which is the mix of all of the audio at once. Let's just drag stuff into here. Mike, Paul, consolidated. And then we also have this Ian track, which will come into effect later. So first thing first, we have to align all the tracks. They hit record at about the same time, but they don't always hit record at the same time as this is Google Meets. They don't always hit record at the same time as Google Meets starts recording. So what we have to do is go through and find a section where they say the same things, and I can already see this possibly looks like it lines up right about here. Maybe not. No, maybe not. Maybe there. I don't know. Let's see. What I'll do is I'll solo this track, listen to a little bit.
We're talking? Good. Okay.
We're talking. All right, I'm recording this, so I will drop off, and Mike, you can take it away. Intros, top 10. Hi, I'm Mike Bush. I'm Paul New. And I'm Colleen Sterling.
Okay, so here they're doing their intros pretty much right off the bat.
Hi, I'm Mike Bush.
I can hear.
What are we doing? Intros?
What are we doing? Intros. You said that pretty early here.
All right, I'm recording this, so I will drop off, and Mike, you can take
This away.
Intros?
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 Well, the S is about there. We're gonna clip some of this out. Like that.
You can take us away.
Intros?
Intros, 1210.
And it's gonna sound a little robotic, because they're overlapping. It's never gonna be quite perfect, but that's okay. We don't need it to be perfect because this track up here, all 3 of these tracks are never going to actually overlap with this track in the final product. So if you listen, it sounds weird right now.
Hi, I'm Mike Bush.
I'm Paul New.
It sounds like echoey.
On Ask the A&Ps, we...
but it will not sound like that in the final product. So now we know we have to cut stuff off of these. So let's cut some there. We already did that here. I'm guessing this is him saying, I'm Paul New.
I'm Paul New.
I'm Mike Bush.
I'm Paul New.
And I'm Colleen Sterling.
Okay.
All right. We're getting there. We're getting there. And I just try and line up the waveforms as close as I can. Like I said, it's never going to be totally perfect. And plus, with the delay of the Google Meets with the internet, it's going to match up pretty much perfectly here.
So you can find out which tack.
There's a little bit of an echo, but then all the way, 2.5 hours later,
Phil,
Yeah,
didn't
Phil.
you do it as
So, but what would be
it's like slightly off. You have this little bit of delay. I know you can't see it with my face there, but that's about 1/10 of a second off now. So there's going to be about 1/10 of a second. Again, that's okay. We're not looking for total perfection here. We're just looking to get as close as we can, and then we can kind of move things around a little bit in the final edit. So these episodes, what they do is they record 2 episodes at once, basically. So we have a 3-hour recording here, and that's going to be 2 full episodes. So what I do is I'm going to have a separate project or a separate multi-track session for the next episode. So what I'll do to make it easier on myself is I will go double-click. So if you double-click in this track, all of the time stamps up on the top here will be related to the multi-track sequence. So you can see 0, 0, 0 is actually right here, and then everything before it is like a negative. It doesn't say negative, but 0, 0, 0 is right here. So we'll put a marker right there because we know that if we cut everything from here to here, it will match up perfectly the next time we bring this audio track in. So we'll just do that with everything. Add a marker there. Add a marker there. Save this. Okay. So now next time I'll just give you an example. Next time we bring this audio in, it's, oops. I got to zoom out a little here. So this is the full audio track. When we drag it in, it's going to look like this. And look at that. They recorded about the exact same time. But what we can do is cut from that audio track. And all I'm doing is just making a little, so I don't have to do this and drag it all over here and then cut. All I'm doing is cutting this little section and then deleting that. And then we can drag everything over and we know it's perfectly lined up or close to perfectly lined up. So that's what I do to drag everything in. And now what we're going to do is the producer, Ian, has sent us timestamps for each part of the episode. There are usually 4 to 6 questions with an intro, an outro, and sometimes a letter reading throughout this. So we will go through and find those timestamps. Oops, we don't need that.
So I've been having
15 seconds.
Hi, I'm Mike. $3,777 to put yourself on the list.
So there we have our introductions. And that just makes it easier for me so I don't have to scrub through all of this audio. And what I'll do is I'll cut that little snippet out, drag it all the way to the end here, place a marker in the timeline, and then say intro. So I know this little bit is the introductions, and then we also have usually a little bit of banter after that.
Was
Now, I like to make sure I have the right timestamps. Sometimes it's a little bit off in the email, so I just want to double check.
Talking.
yourself on the list. We one of our clients. One of our clients
Starts with
one of our clients.
one of our clients.
The worst comes to worst.
And then it goes to 1401.
The cylinder get to say anything.
Oh, that would be the
Oh.
There, yeah.
3 that says if you take something apart, you have to put it back.
right.
Or let someone else put it together.
So we're not including that list a little bit.
It's used. Let's pick.
Yeah, we'll fill it in there. Yeah. That's a sad story.
Click everybody.
Or let someone else put it together. Clean up your mess.
So we're actually ending before he says that. Everybody laughing. See, the timestamp said 1401, but really it's at 1340. So I don't know if this is Audition's problem. I haven't quite been able to figure out why those timestamps are off. They are on when I listen to the original audio, or even the restored audio. But they're not on when I bring them into here. Not totally sure why that is. If anybody knows, please let me know. That would save me a lot of headache. All right, so that is the introductions. Oops. And actually, we don't need any of this audio because there's no callers in the introduction. And that's the only time we need this track on the bottom. So the first question starts at 107. And I know it's not going to be at 107.
Similar.
It is.
Okay, so I'm going to drop off. Colleen will introduce you. You can ask your question and we'll go off. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Our first question is from Mike, who is frustrated.
First question is from Mike.
You can ask your
Our first
Look at that. Nailed it. So we're at about 105.40 instead of 107.20. It's 2 minutes off. And we got about 10 minutes here to 117.36, which I will listen to.
traded with a
It is pretty much.
A lot
I'll
of
give you
that's
Anymore.
well in.
there's a couple of places that you can put the temperature probe. But if you're installing the engine monitor as the primary system, the oil temperature probe, or all the probes for that matter, if they're duplicating the original instruments, the probes have to be in the original locations.
Interesting.
And that
Okay, ends with her saying, interesting. By the way, I am just playing this from the media player at Windows. Again, because I need to double check to listen to the timestamps. So this is 117.36 is where it ended. And it ends with Colleen saying, interesting. And this still about a little over 10 minutes. Little over 10 minutes.
Our first question is from this frustrated. Interesting.
There we go. Okay, snip that. Bring it out here, and I'll do the same thing. Add a marker. Question 1, Q1. Okay, the next one is 128.49.
that makes sense.
Wonderful.
Feed down to a tank underneath.
Mike, we're going to cut
Cool.
you off there.
Colleen, and Paul and Mike, I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling us about your wonderful.
Wow, they had to cut him off. Okay, they're going to cut him off there. That's where the timestamp actually starts.
Right. All right, Mike. We're going to cut
Cool.
you off there.
Colleen,
And what I'll do, 117, so it's about 11, a little over 11 minutes later.
time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yep.
Thanks for. All right, Mike. We're going to cut
Cool.
you off.
So you just need to calibrate it and you'll be good.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, Mike. We're going to cut
Cool.
you off there.
Let's start it with that.
All right, Mike. We're going to cut
Cool.
you off there.
Colleen, and Paul and Mike, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we should learn more about.
We're dialing in too.
Yep. See you, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And with the Cias, drag this to the end of question 1. There we go. Question 1. Ready to roll, ready to edit. Question 2. Starts at 44:09.
at least some of them to go into general
44,
aviation.
49.
Who knows the-
All the cathedral. Just the recovery was 3 days. Gosh.
Yeah.
We both had big sinus things that happened on the trip. So today is our first day of feeling somewhat normal.
You sound good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 44:49. Whoops.
Okay, sounds good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
hear you great. Yep.
Okay. Our next question is from David, who is challenging.
David. And then I just look around. It's going to be before 44. What was it? 44:49.
Okay. Our next.
Sounds a little distraught.
Okay. Our next question is from David.
David. 53:57. Under 10 minutes. Let's see what it sounds like. What did I say?
Our
53,
and owners are-
57.
and that's
Time, I think. Playing in now.
Everything. You can do 100 hours time to perform. The only
Oh.
difference in the two is that an IA is the only one that's allowed to do an annual. An A&P can do 100-hour,
Mhm.
but it's the same inspection with the same requirements.
Do we do the AD?
Same inspection, same requirement.
Well, now it has to go under 100-hour.
no, it doesn't.
Typically required if you
But it's the same inspection with the same requirements. Do we do the
same requirements.
Do we?
We're not including Colleen. All right, this is question 2. So you see my process here. And we got 59:41.
Search up
Almond
plan.
can
If
It's-
to me that
and do that.
It doesn't help the FAA to change the way annual inspections are performed. It's floating along just fine.
rule changes.
Got Mike Bush in there.
Along just fine.
Rule changes.
Really, we can.
Rule changes.
We need the. You know. At least for now. And then we got about 4 minutes. See what that
Are
sounds
very
like.
hard.
We're looking for 103.26.
Very few that we have to pay mechanics a more reasonable wage so that we can attract them.
Mhm.
And to do that, we have to raise shop rates, and to do that, owners have to go along.
We're
with it.
we're gonna lose some owners. We're gonna lose.
So I'm going to include. He does not want Colleen's words put in at the end, and he kind of trails off a little bit. So we're going to include Colleen's words here, just so we can include the trail off from Mike's track. Drag this there. And then what we'll do is just to remind ourselves that is not part of it. And again, we'll clean all this up as we go. But first, we just have to snip out all of the questions that we need.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. So
Hey,
Long time listener,
Hey.
first time caller.
So long.
take care.
pot.
Yep.
Rather than just guessing here, it's about 2.5 minutes. After that,
Program for small airplanes than the A&Ps, but nobody wants to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or
And
nobody,
David,
nobody in authority wants to.
Well, a great discussion, and thanks for taking the questions.
yeah.
ooh, that's a lot of breathing. Let's see.
Yeah,
Let's
there's
make
some
sure.
Cats fast. Go to the Cirrus factory. They're small airplanes. There's no doubt that if somebody wanted to, there's no doubt that if somebody wanted to, they could come up with. There's no doubt that if somebody wanted to, they,
Everybody accepts annual.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
love to
Thank you.
stir the pot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care.
All
Thanks,
right.
David.
Bye-bye.
As always, end with the goodbyes. Drag this to the end. Now we got question 2 set up, ready to go. Question 3, 148.36.
they could come.
You have to. She doesn't need any.
learning
No.
500 feet a minute,
Oof.
and
All right.
DC.
We got Albert now. Yeah.
You're in a
Counts.
We're not worried
He's a
about
wife that's running his
you've
business.
got a director of maintenance to run
Yeah.
a business. You're a vestigial.
We're not buying
organ.
that story. at all.
You are an appendix.
I have no
All
lunch.
right.
Appendix.
All right, Albert. Thanks for your pins.
Dang.
Go ahead and unmute for us. I'm going to drop off. Colleen will introduce you, and you can ask your question.
Our next question is from Albert, whose airplane is
All right, it says 148.36. He meant 148.56. Clearly, he does not want to include that stuff before. And it's Albert. So let's go through here. Let's find Colleen.
Our next question is from Albert.
And really, I've done a lot of these episodes, so I kind of can recognize Colleen or Paul introducing questions, the waveforms for them introducing questions. And I know it's pretty close to 148. You see here we're at 146.14. So that's how I'm able to find it so quickly in here. I've just done so many of these that I can kind of recognize the patterns. And we're going to 208.30. I know it's going to be before that.
You get these guys. First guy Royal, he just
Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Albert.
And I don't even need to look at the timestamps because I know that's right. Only one timestamp in this question. And by the way, if you make a marker with M, you can hit the slash key, and then it automatically is going to rename it or highlight the text box so you can rename it, whatever. Gotta love keyboard shortcuts. All right. Letters. So this is where Ian's track will come into play. We're at 229, so I know it looks like here.
I think the best. All right, it's time for letters.
I bet you right here.
All right, it's time for letters.
Letters. We got a couple. The first one is just some advice generally.
All right, it's time for letters. That's what we're looking for. 229.
start
with me.
Sit on.
definitely not.
You want things are
They advice generally. We've had a couple of okay. All right, here we go. All right, it's time for letters. We've got a
Perfect. And then to 2:38. So that's about 9 minutes of discussion. And you're not seeing this behind my head. Let me move my head. I am looking at this duration, so I know from the timestamps that I know it's about 9 minutes after the start of this question. So I'm just looking at this duration here. Okay, what did I say the timestamp was? 2:38. Let's listen.
couple. The first one is just that's
Fall
right.
off.
Yeah.
that's in
You know, it's
second
like
That's right up there with toilet bowl cleaner.
well,
3806.
So-
Oh.
I've used Drano, but
yeah, I know.
take the stain off used Drano, but
Yeah, I know. Very cool.
Yep.
very great, and we'll do the
We don't need those last two. Oh, very cool. Yep. It's unnecessary. We'll just end it at the laugh. End it on the high notes, folks. Letter. They were chopping this up pretty good. Question 4. This is the last question for this first episode. 251.
Were all the helicopters like that, or just
Dewey.
that one?
Slavic, which is our next question is from Slavic, which is
You can see how far off we are now, all the way at 2 hours and 46 minutes. The timestamp says 251.
Yep. Very
forward.
251:07.
really.
Yeah, you go on to Amazon.
all right.
Okay.
Okay, so great. Welcome. I'll drop off. I'll introduce you, and then you can ask your question.
Our next question is from Slavic, which is our next question is from Slavic.
Perfect. We got about 11 and a half minutes. That's how long the discussion is. We'll go there. It looks like this is
And they
Bye-bye.
thanks.
Good to see you again.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that's the end of that question. We'll throw it at the end here. Question 4. All right, and then we have the outros, which is all the way at the beginning, interestingly enough. 3746.
Great.
Here's the
Number-
second. Well, that's a okay. And then
Great.
here's the
Number
second
2.
outro. Well, that's it for another Ask the A&Ps episode. Hopefully, we got a few things.
And they usually do 2 outros for each episode. So I heard her say, okay, that was the first one. Now I'll start with the second one. So I just went and looked for the first one.
Yes, and whole
Screen just went. Sorry. I tried to remove myself and everything just froze. Okay, that's all it is. I apologize. I'll do it in French now. Okay. I can help you with it. Yeah. Well, that's it for another Ask the A&Ps episode. Hopefully we got a few things right this time around. Let us know what you think and keep sending us your tricky questions. You can email us at podcast@aopa.org. We'll see you. Everybody.
Outros are pretty short. Throw this at the end. Outro. And again, we don't need that bottom track for outros. We're going to cut all this. Usually save that for editing, but all right. So this, and we can delete all this because we have everything we need cut out for show number 1. this is all of the fragments that we have for this first episode. I am going to take a quick break, eat some lunch, and I will be back. And we can go through this beast and start editing and cutting things up and getting this ready to roll. All right, we are back. Now, the next step that we are going to do is we're going to go through and strip silence, what I call strip silencing, each one of these little chunks. And then after that, we're going to go through and edit everything. And then we're finally going to mix. And at the very end, we're going to put it all together into a one cohesive episode. So one thing at a time here. So I'm going to go through each one of these parts and get rid of any silence that we see, any like long bits of silence. Like this here. Any long bits of silence that we don't need. You know what I'm going to do first? I'm going to highlight this track, and this track. And if you didn't know, if you double click anywhere, can't double click on the clip because then you'll go inside the clip. But if you double click anywhere in the empty space inside of a track, it will highlight every clip in that track. So what I want to do is highlight all three of these tracks. So I just hold Control, double click here, hold Control, double click here, and we have all three of these highlighted. What I'm going to go over here is go to Properties, raise the gain up more than we think we're going to need. We're going to turn this gain back down all the way to 0 at the end. This is just to help see the waveforms a little bit better. So ideally, the hosts or guests or whoever's on a podcast records a little bit quieter. That way you have the headroom to spare so you're not clipping ever. And when that is the case, sometimes the waveform is a little bit too small when you are splitting it up into 3 or 4 tracks like we're doing here. So I will just raise the gain all the way up and then turn down the output so we're not, blasting our ears off. I also need to turn off the vocals effects rack. And we should be good to go.
We're going to have to replace that turbocharger. And by the way, your other...
and sometimes I'll keep laughs like this. Sometimes I'll get rid of them. Just depends on this. On the banter here and the intro, I will keep at least Paul's there.
Right. And turbochargers to get turbochargers over.
All of these little yes, and just tiny little not interruptions, but tiny little interludes from the other hosts I will generally get rid of. They're just kind of more distracting than they are useful, so I'll get rid of stuff like that.
On the intake?
What's wrong with this picture, guys?
They got them switched?
Yes, of course they. But that's all we can do for you.
That's all they can do, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking to the shop and saying, well, can we move this to another?
It's a monopoly. We call it a monopoly.
And we're just kind of spot listening here, just to see if we want to get rid of things or keep them.
Well, but
to get their money.
To get this airplane extracted. So now we're and put this.
So tell me, what airport should I not Mayday into?
Find a supervisor to look over his shoulder,
and we'll charge you for that.
We're gonna have to charge you for that. I hesitate to say This is just like,
Wow.
How unfortunate.
it is true that the together
Yeah.
There should be like a better business.
They started to say to us, well, we
Don't want it.
and we explained to them that the regulation does not say that. The regulation,
Wow.
they're not making it easy. They're faced.
Being
Yeah.
stubborn and
Isn't that
That's
a
happened.
wouldn't issue a ferry permit? But no,
If the person talking does not respond at all, like this,
But that's happened.
wouldn't issue a ferry permit.
then I'll just get rid of it. And we could, don't be afraid to keep, like I know we're probably going to get rid of this silence, in the final edit, but we can go through and fine tune things as we're editing as well.
Yeah, sympathetic to this aircraft
Yeah.
owner,
it
actually.
almost makes you not want to declare an emergency, which is the wrong thing, right? You don't want
Yeah, landing, and I
Yeah,
can't
you did
ever
good.
fault him for declaring an emergency. Although when you do declare, you
Push
can't
it.
fault the guy for making a precaution because
starts the ball rolling.
they
Yeah.
have to call you and they have to get your statement
Even that is like, didn't respond. So,
because they have
well, you can hear it on his track. So
starts the ball rolling.
they
Yeah.
have
I'll actually keep that one because he is silent for that little bit, and you can hear Colleen's track on Mike's. You can hear Colleen's voice on Mike's track.
Well, it's unfortunate.
seen over the years. So nothing ever
Season-
bad has happened from it.
Yeah, we always say May days are free, if it and
Yeah.
declare the May Day and get on the ground and
All right, that one is strip silence. Mike is talking for most of that. Now, here is where we have this fourth track down here. And this also has the host's voice on there. So in cases like this, where they might be talking over the guest, we just have to get rid of their track completely. So we'll go through and strip silence all of the very noticeable silences. And then we'll actually work our way backwards to remove their instances of voice. Like if they're talking alone,
Stuff. I don't know. I mean, whether that's a good thing, but that
we don't want to keep this track. We're just going to have,
stuff. I don't know. I mean, whether that
obviously that sounds much better. So I'll show you what I mean. I'll show you what I mean when I'm through here.
that's it. Yep.
Okay. All right. Because 74, Cessna made the transition in the mid.
That's it. Yep. That's it. Yep.
Okay. All right. Because 74, Cessna.
I have a PO.
The guest says okay there, so I'm going to just keep this around.
to,
Hmm.
and gradually over time, we got more and
All
more.
the stuff we can get rid of.
If you press the inner
I'll keep this laugh. You can see he has some major background noise happening.
And, it's
And I
good.
just
Yeah.
didn't know. I was trying to figure out, like, okay, is that the right answer, or is that the answer
Yes.
that makes?
I guess it adds to the authenticity, but not much we can do about it.
And it
And-
just shows the numbers so that I can see how close I'm getting. It doesn't throw
Yeah.
yellow cautionary anymore, which is I'm happy with.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right.
and,
So that,
and sometimes there's conflicting information.
Yeah. There may be changes in the installation. Yeah. There may be changes in the installation.
Yeah, we'll fade this in so it won't sound so abrupt.
that kind of thing. But
Well,
Again,
Yeah. not on your- to the
oil
engine, yeah.
into the oil galleries. So it's at the coolest part of the cycle.
Interesting. All right, Mike, we're going to cut you
Cool.
off there.
Colleen, and Paul and Mike, I really
Okay, now that we've strip silenced these three tracks, we'll go through and
Yeah.
See you, Mike.
All right. Thank.
get rid of the final track here.
All right,
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yep. All right.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks for telling us about your wonderful.
I really appreciate the time. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yep.
Thanks for telling us about your wonderful. Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for telling us.
Appreciate the time. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yep.
And Paul and Mike, I really appreciate the time. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yep.
Thanks for telling us about your wonderful 152.
Yeah, it's
Or
very
150.
cool.
150. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yep.
And
Either
the
way-
the probe also, the probe also has to be in the same location as the.
Or that kind of thing. But
Right. Well, I'm again.
or that kind of thing. But
Right.
or that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I'm
He probably
Kind of thing. But
right. Well, I'm again. I'm
we want to just get rid of that but.
Headed.
okay. All right. Yeah, and one of the things I was wondering is like,
Engine manufacturer had it.
okay. All right. Yeah, and one of the things I was wondering is like,
Had in mind.
all right. Yeah, and one of the things
Yeah, it's just gonna have to be the airplane noise. I mean,
okay.
and sometimes there's conflicting.
To mimic the original.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then
No, it's true to the original gauge. It's what the original gauge used to
Yeah,
show, which
it-
is it's true to the it's true to the original gauge. It's what the it's true to the
That's exactly how it's.
manual says.
Yeah, yeah. That's exactly how it's supposed to be done.
Tell.
Yeah. So I took it to
and basically what I'm doing here is just highlighting this and watching to see if the waveforms match the top three waveforms up here. If there's ever a silence in the top three waveforms, then I know that's neither one of these three speaking. So I know not to get rid of it because I know that's the caller. And it depends on the guest, depends on the caller. Sometimes they speak more. Sometimes they just let the host go.
okay.
What?
And I
Really?
and I
Messed up. Mine's a 71. So,
even
I have a
maybe
POH of my 71.
Yeah. No.
We don't need that.
I have a
So mine's a 71.
We don't need the mm-hmm.
That's it. Yep.
Handbook.
That's it. Yep.
Okay. All right. Because
Pilot's operating handbook.
That's it. Yep.
okay. All right.
Right,
Whatever.
man.
But it's I believe it's a
Yeah.
And like here, I know that he is talking, the guest is talking, because there are silences here and here, but there's still a waveform on the bottom. But I know that Mike is talking over him, so we can't have both the host and the guest talking because we'll have that echo. So I just get rid of Mike's track.
it's not an it's not an airplane flying manual or
Flight
whatever.
manual.
But it's a
And the quality is not as good. It's not going to be as good. Mike's track is not going to be good as good on this track because it's over the internet. It's recorded over the internet, and this is recorded locally. But we got to do what we got to do.
yes.
I would rather have a single bad quality audio track than have it being doubled and get the good quality in there.
Does it actually have a POH?
Yes.
It's not an owner's manual. It's an actual POH.
No, it's not an AFM.
It's not an it's not an airplane flying manual or
Flight
whatever.
manual.
But it's I believe it's a
No.
So they should not.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a GI 275.
So the
GI 275.
okay, so
Okay, so 50. And
That's
it's from,
cool.
it's a 1971
Wow.
Aerobag.
All right. Question 1. That is strip silenced and ready for editing. We'll move on to question 2.
Norms. And I love this question.
I love it.
Go ahead, David. Tell us what you got.
Hello, Colleen, Mike, and Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Paul.
Yes.
And,
Sounds like
and
my
he was
spot.
having trouble getting a
And by the way, we're not too worried if we miss anything down here or if we cut too much, because we can always fix that in the edit while we're editing as well. So we're just kind of doing some basic, just eyeball here, make our lives a lot easier while we're editing. So we can move clips around without moving everything all at once.
my next question, which was basically, it seems almost intuitive that if you extended the time interval,
Sure. Yeah. I can see that.
Absolutely. And
it needs to be addressed now. Lucky you brought the
And unfortunately, stuff like this, like a throat clear,
issue that needs to be addressed.
I can't get rid of that because it's baked right into this waveform, which is the caller talking. So
It's extremely expensive and time consuming for the FAA to change.
oh wow, Paul's in his shop. He records in his shop, so we're gonna get stuff like that, but that's okay.
right.
version of the manual or
My editor brain hates it, but I think it adds to the authenticity. Oops.
Right.
It
Yeah.
means current as of the time the airplane rolled out of the factory, not current as of now. But now,
I think that would be a great book.
so things that people believe that aren't true.
Is there no hope to relieve the mechanics crisis?
You're challenging the norms, right? Everybody accepts annual inspection, but you're
Yeah.
Okay.
We love to stir the pot.
yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care.
All
Thanks,
right,
David.
bye.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Thanks.
Take care.
All
Thanks,
right,
David.
bye-bye.
Thanks,
All right,
David.
bye-bye. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks,
All right.
David.
Bye-bye.
Stir the pot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We love.
So stirring the pot.
Yeah.
Okay.
We love to stir the pot.
Yeah. So thanks for stirring the pot.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the questions.
Yeah. I love your question because you're challenging the norm.
Oh, dang it. Sometimes I'll double click on a clip and go into it when I don't mean to.
Nobody in authority.
Well, a great discussion, and thanks for taking the questions.
Yeah. I love your question. We're gonna
There's no doubt.
If you remember, that's the one where we got rid of Colleen's voice at the end.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sometimes little stuff like this. In this case, it's Colleen's voice, but sometimes you need to keep it because the guest is agreeing with something, and that actually adds to the conversation, or it wouldn't make sense if it was removed. So I have to check these little tiny one word
Yeah.
things. But that in that case, it was Colleen, so we can get rid of it. Move all this.
but the requirement to follow the methods, techniques, and practices in the current version of the manual or ICA, and then there's an interpretation that says, "Oh, current doesn't mean what you thought it meant. It means current as of the time the airplane rolled out of the factory, not current as of now."
We're not really listening to the podcast yet. We're still in the, you can call pre-production phase, but pre-post-production phase. And you can see here, there's quite a bit of overlap, so we might have to do some trickery here.
You brought the airplane in now.
Oh, yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
The airplane in now.
oh, yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just have to get rid of this here.
Airplane in now.
Oh, yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing, so to start.
So that first "oh yes" from Paul is going to be on this track, and then everything after that is going to be on his locally recorded track. And luckily, there's not too much of a difference. It's pretty obviously a difference, but I think most people either won't be able to tell or won't care. Just the nature of the beast, like I said. And just running through. And you can see I'm just doing a little bit at a time to make sure that the waveforms match.
In for its annual.
Right. Well, I
And here's another little tricky one. Annual inspection. We can't just cut him off right there.
In for.
We can't just say "and for," and then he just doesn't finish.
Right. Well,
Right.
Well,
It just doesn't quite work.
It's annual.
right. Well, Right. Well, I've
It's annual.
right. Well, I've written it.
So this is what we do here. We'll just fade this one out and fade this one in, because he's done talking right about here.
Annual.
Right. Well,
Nice inspection.
Well,
So it's not perfect.
It's annual.
right. Well, I've written.
Annual.
Right. Well, I've. Right. Well, I've written it.
I think that is about as good as we're gonna get.
In for. It's annual.
Right. Well, I've written.
You can tell what he's saying. It is fading out a little bit, but I think that's okay because he is coming in with the quote unquote interruption. So I think that's okay.
Well, and if
This.
Benefits.
And it's easy
hard to compete with. Well, it's a lot less interesting though.
process.
Well, and
making going on.
Yeah.
But we still have now, though, the critical shortage of mechanics, and the solution for that would seem to be a combination of things. Number one, obviously more mechanics. You have to make more of them, and that's an ongoing process.
things.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know that you
Bunch of little grumbles.
Well, David, I think you know the answer.
Pressure to do that.
Well, David, I think.
Tell us what you got. This question.
I love it.
Go ahead, David. Tell us what you got.
Hello,
And there's just a little gap here. We'll fix that in the edit. All right, question 2. Ready to roll.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh.
Too complicated.
And what are their instructions for priming?
For priming, nothing too complicated.
And what are their instructions?
We're just going to leave that as it is. We might edit his voice a little, we might cut down on some of that, but we'll just leave that in the 4th consolidated track.
Does it run on?
Well, when it's running and you pull to make sure that it'll cut off.
Chug a chug a chug. Yeah.
No, I can't say anything's been reported on the shutdown.
When you pull a mixture control, it reduces
Cutting the fuel off.
when you pull
And that supports the you said it wouldn't be consistently getting worse. Your school,
Yeah, we'd have to try. We'd have to look
Swap,
at it.
that's a real quick thing to do. Swap the two flow dividers and see if the problem moves for different airplanes. The ignition, but the ignition harness and the flow divider.
Yeah, I would check the flow divider first. I think listening to
This is going to sound terrible, but
the
This part might seem a little bit boring, but honestly, it's a little bit like when you cut the grass and you're done cutting the grass and you look and it just looks real uniform and nice and nothing that you don't need is there.
feel like easy. And this one's I don't know, maybe like
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but
Cutting those little mouth noises. All this stuff, I'm not 100% sure if it needs to go or not. Like this, I'm not going to just like cut this little bit here. I mean, I could now. I've wasted enough time. But stuff like that, usually what I'll do is just ignore it, move on. I'm not worried about, 4 seconds of a gap. I'm worried about, these big gaps here. These are more like 40 seconds, 40-second gaps, a minute-long gaps. These are like little 4-second gaps. I'll probably cut this in the edit, stuff like that. We're not super worried about right now. When in doubt, in this step, just leave the audio alone. That way you can listen to it in the edit. And it will be a little bit more work in the edit, but not too bad.
thanks for calling.
thanks, Albert.
Yeah, I'll keep that little by.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Robert. We want to get back. So
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Albert. Yeah. This is what we call a 5-finger discount.
We'll throw.
All right.
Okay, we'll throw some, I guess.
No swap. You were swapping parts. That's no.
Let's throw some more parts of the problem, I guess.
no swap. You were swapping.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but give it a look.
Sounds like we. Okay. Sounds like we need to.
Well, I don't know. Maybe Lycoming's very proud of that flow divider. I'm not sure how. Swap flow dividers. Swap flow dividers. Try swapping flow dividers. I like
Okay,
that.
so Albert, this
Easy
falls in
thing
the
to do.
category. Yep.
So if you were having to,
contamination in there. And
well, that would show up in the screen.
in there. And
Well,
then-
that would show up in the screen.
There's a screen in the servo.
in the.
in there.
Well, that would show.
Get rid of. I know he kind of trails off right here,
Well, that would show up in the screen.
and we don't really need that. He's already responding. Paul is already responding to what he said back here. It just took him this long to react to to what he's saying, so we don't really need the trail off. We understand what he is talking about. Paul understands what he's talking about, I should say. I am not an airplane man.
Not that I'm aware of.
Hmm.
No.
Has anybody watched for that?
No.
Has anybody watched for that? I wonder.
Not. No.
Has anybody watched for?
Okay, so let's keep this first. No.
Has anybody?
Yeah, we'll keep that.
You're not seeing
fuel lines.
You're not seeing fuel dripping out the low point drain on the induction system when people are starting, are you?
Just scanning.
School, yeah.
Yeah, SWAT try.
Or school, yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to try. We'd have to look
SWAT,
at it.
that's a real quick thing to do.
Actually, we're gonna keep Colleen's
To try.
Because he doesn't really respond. Colleen kind of responds for him, like in school, yeah.
Or school, yeah.
So we're gonna keep Colleen's track.
Right.
And does it start when they do that?
That
Correct.
right.
And does it start when they do that?
After a while, that became the norm. After a while, that became the norm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so the mixture is all the way back.
After a while, that became the norm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so the mixture is all the way back in the throttle.
It would be interesting to go out and try a shutdown and see if you're still getting. A chug, yeah.
No, I can't say anything's been reported.
Does it run on?
Well, when it's running and you pull the mixtured idle cutoff, does the engine stop cleanly and immediately, or is there a tendency to run on for a while?
Chug a chug, yeah.
No, I can't say anything's.
Some weird
No,
Yeah.
little chair squeak. At least I hope it was a chair squeak.
So they replaced the
That's interesting, and that could be a progressive disease that would get worse over time if the spring was too weak, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Or it's just getting weaker.
Yeah. So you've got.
yeah.
Sometimes you can have fuel in the cylinders, so it's basically a pre-primed engine, and then when you add priming to it, even if the minimal amount of priming, it suddenly gets over-primed. So if your flow divider is not,
And if you're having problems with the thing not idling properly, once it gets started, then it's a question of adjusting the idle mixture, and you're supposed to check it. And
well,
right.
Oh.
Right. Well,
And
some of the receipt gauges.
no,
but it basically says,
Well, that's useful.
But well,
and
some of the receipt gauges.
but
something about gauges. Hopefully it's easier to understand if you know the context of the situation. And we'll see that in the edit. I know I keep saying in the edit. I know we're editing right now, but I'm thinking editing as in cutting words out like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
Following it correctly.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that tells me that the engine is flooded because okay, because it was funny. I tried to pull a Colleen last night.
Oh,
Okay.
Just start to move. This is flexible.
Okay.
Flexible.
Okay. Would you please describe?
We'll throw it over to AOPA, right?
Okay, so this is an
AOPA, right?
okay, so this is
the AOPA, right?
okay, so
Since yeah, so and since we did, we gave it a shot. We were looking for new ideas, so we threw it.
wow.
Okay.
No.
Okay, good.
No.
Okay,
Okay, good.
Wow.
Oh, good.
No.
Okay,
good.
Wow.
Ouch. Well, you didn't do that yet, right?
No.
Okay,
good.
Wow.
Oh, good.
well, we're not gonna let you do that.
Yeah. Don't touch me.
Time to replace the engine.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So yeah.
Those things are heavy.
Yeah.
And they started.
Sounds like you threw more than mechanics at it.
Here's a little tricky because we don't want to keep any more than this, but we can't just cut Paul's laugh off. So we'll just
At it, and they started.
Sounds like you threw. Sounds like you. Sounds like you threw.
And they started.
Sounds like you threw.
there we go. We got half his laugh recorded locally and half his laugh, probably 3/4 of his laugh recorded on the internet. Okay. Question 3 down. Let me stretch a little here. Now you know what I'm talking about. This is a tricky one. This is a tricky podcast. But it's fun. It's fun once you get it together and see the whole thing, listen to the whole thing all the way through. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
More, yeah.
Well, and
so,
gosh.
this is from Joe.
Okay, so this is Ian. So what we'll do actually, because Ian recorded his own track, so we're gonna have to add. You know what we'll do? We'll add a track, a temporary track here, just to make sure things are lined up. So we'll solo this one.
All right, it's time for letters.
And we'll see where he starts.
It's time for letters. All right, it's time for letters.
Hey, perfect. All right, so we'll line this up as best as we can. There we are. There we are. And then we'll go to the end.
Stains off, and then I had to repaint it.
I know, but
Yeah, I know.
All right, great. And we'll do the
Perfect. And then we don't need, this will be the second letter reading, which we don't need for this. And then we'll drag this up to that track. Control Alt Backspace. And then Shift A. And you know what? We'll remove all of the bus tracks and the tracks that we're not using. So here, because Ian recorded his stuff separately, we can actually strip silence his entire track.
Yeah. Seems like that would work.
that is
Yeah,
interesting.
a lot less expensive than going to school for 2.5 years.
And the light sport people get.
So
Jeez.
Oh
this
gosh.
is from Joe.
Oh gosh.
This is from Joe. He said, "Injustice got done listening to the OCD dentist," which that's not fair. And so that's a brand name, Plexus.
yeah,
Yep.
I use Plexus too.
Aircraft spray wash and wax. It's manufactured by Boeing. It's called Aircraft Spray. He uses it interior and exterior. Simple green.
What's the name of the
It's
product?
called Aircraft Spray Wash and Wax. He never uses water.
But-
He never uses water after, I guess,
Oh.
flying after he.
I just use a bucket of water. I don't spray the heck out of the.
And Mike suggested, oh yeah, so I assume that starts with a K. And this person sent me an email or a text.
To spray an area, wipe it off with a damp microfiber. He uses
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Friend gave me a bottle of. This is X dash. Kind of nice.
That's nice. Yeah.
And then he sprays a little distilled water on it when he wipes it off. And friend gave me a bottle of. This is X dash IT. Carbon remover. Exit, I guess. Carbon remover to tackle the problem. The stuff.
That's beautiful.
We had a
Yeah.
170 D
He likes
Yeah.
Does it have an N at the end?
No, to clean the windows.
from McFarland.
He likes
Yeah.
Does it have an N at the end?
No, it's D period
Probably.
A
No,
period.
D.
Okay, that sounded a little bit soon, so.
He
An
likes
N
that.
at the end?
No, it's
Probably.
D
No, it's
period
DAM.
A period. Yeah.
Oh,
So-
I like damn better.
Yeah. It's a damn good cleaner.
Get your hands off. Oh,
Yep.
spruce. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Check 8.
So there you go.
Spruce.
Carbon remover. That's a pretty airplane.
Is that a car? Check up exit. I like that.
That's a pretty carbon
So-
remover.
Oh,
Yep.
spruce.
Carbon
So-
remover.
Oh,
Yep.
spruce. Okay.
Yep.
Check 8.
So there you go.
Spruce. Awesome.
Yes.
I wonder if I know Dustin.
That's
He's
a-
either
beautiful
fast or
airplane.
he has a very slow running.
There's a lot of back and forth here. So you can see I'm leaving a lot of these like little gaps here and there. This one's kind of difficult because everyone's talking, but nobody's talking a lot at once. So this one's going to be a little bit more of a pain, I think.
I know.
All right, that's good.
Off the
Gonna say,
airplane.
Yeah.
The
Well,
stains
if you
were
really
still
want to
there.
take,
When the paint fell off the
gonna say,
airplane, the
well,
stains
if you
were
really
still
want to
there.
take the stain off, use drainer.
8.
So there you go.
Spruce.
He gets it from Spruce.
Carbon
So-
remover.
Oh,
Yep.
spruce.
Gets it from Spruce.
Carbon
So-
remover.
He gets it
Carbon
from Spruce.
remover.
Oh, spruce.
So-
Okay.
Yep.
Check 8.
Yep.
Aircraft spruce.
So there you go.
Awesome. I used to, a long time ago, I used to use oven.
You can hear he says,
He gets it from Spruce.
Carbon.
He gets it
Carbon
from Spruce.
we'll see if everything else matches.
Because unless you're working on LSAs, obviously there's no use for it.
So
but- yeah.
you'd go and work in a shop as a repair.
I think
mechanic.
is it 2 weeks? It's like a 2-week in-person course or something like that.
And I wonder who offers those.
Phil, I think it's Sebring, right?
Yeah,
Lockwood,
Phil.
didn't
Yeah,
he do it as well?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
More, yeah.
Well, and
No pathway, but we'll take it.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple on the clean.
Okay, that seems like it's lined up pretty correctly. We can always fix it later. There's the letter read stripped and ready to roll. And finally, question 4.
Hello. Go ahead, Slavic.
That's right. Hello, everybody. And
Hello.
I'm a second-time caller. No,
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Never have guessed that. I mean,
Well,
the only thing I could think is
why
that
don't you
maybe
go talk to the director, mate?
were all the helicopters like that?
Just that one.
Are we unanimous?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
well, right.
So-
In that school, at least, I mean, the FBO maintains the helicopters.
Wow.
Whoa.
Never have guessed that. I mean,
Well,
the only thing I could think is that maybe.
Why don't you go talk to
Wow. I mean, I wonder if the vibration frequency or something is different on a helicopter.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, because a car, you just tighten the living daylights out of an oil filter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the oil filter itself,
Uh,
because we say
doesn't have provision for safety wiring the oil filter out. That's
No.
affinity, because
Old
when
timer.
you spin, no,
Paul's obviously got something vendetta.
no.
Paul's obviously got something vendetta.
I got.
Oh, it's the
causes
pole.
them to lock and clamp on the safety wire.
Yeah.
These things never. I'm just
Yeah.
being that guy, but I safety second spin.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
do whatever part you're safety, and then you do the second spin. Of course,
Yeah.
these things never break. I get it. I'm just
Yeah.
being that guy, but I safety wire.
So when you say you safety wire by hand, you mean you don't use
Oh.
So, But
Slavic,
back
I'm
to-
sorry.
back to
We've
Slavic's question.
totally gone off rails here.
Yeah, we
Now-
all
yeah.
think you're well filtered.
I would have been shocked,
Chat
too.
with the director of maintenance about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
scary.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
You know, I was always taught that
Yeah.
you know,
And I'm just, this I normally probably wouldn't do, but I'm just reminding myself that
scary.
That sounds good.
Discussion.
that the tracks are overlapping. So when I'm going through it, I know I'm not going to just skip over this part.
I occasionally leave safety wire off certain things. Like we're happy that despite
Yes.
the fact that it was safety
Well,
wired, but
It is apparently well tested, right?
I would be nervous about that. I occasionally
It is apparently well tested, right?
I would be nervous about that.
We'll decide if we want to. We might need to cut these two laughters and cut this.
Right?
We'll see. We'll leave it for now. When in doubt, just leave it. Probably can just get rid of all this.
Rotorway?
Rotorway, yes.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay.
So, and as you can imagine, the oil filter for that engine comes from the automotive world, and it
Mhm.
just doesn't.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You have a good excuse for no wire.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds like a really neat aircraft.
All right, Slavic.
Well, all right. Yeah. Thank you
Yep.
so much for.
Thanks for the
Well, all right. Yeah. Thank
Yep.
you so much.
All right, Slavic.
Well, all right. Yeah. Thank you
Yep.
so much for.
thanks for the question.
Thanks for
Very
calling back.
interesting.
Good to see you again. Thanks for
Very
calling back.
interesting.
Good to see you again.
Good to
Yeah.
see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Go have some fun.
All right, Slavic.
Well, all right. Yeah. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Yeah. It's time to go get another rating. there you go. It's never too
Floatplane.
late. After reading, Mike?
No. I do not.
Oh, there you go. It's never too
Floatplane.
late.
Floatplane, sailplane, no helicopter.
Yeah, it's time to go.
Floatplane, sailplane, no helicopter.
Yeah, it's time. Yeah, you have a good excuse for no wire.
Yeah. If there are provisions for safety wiring, well, if there are provisions for safety wiring, they should.
The oil filter.
Well, safety wired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a good excuse for no wire.
Yeah.
Are built rotorways that
Still in the process of being.
it is. Yeah, it is flying. It is flying. Yeah. Tempest filters.
Well, don't drill a hole in the oil filter.
Good point.
There is no little tabs with little holes like on.
No provisions for safety wire.
Provisioning for safety
no
wire.
provisions for safety.
Get him.
Yeah, so yeah, so to tell you the truth, there is a aspect in my experimental helicopter. The engine is from the
Like
right.
I would be nervous about that.
Apparently well tested, right?
I would.
Well tested, right? Right.
I would.
Right. Tested, right?
That sounds pretty good, pretty natural.
Apparently well tested, right?
I would be nervous.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
It is well,
but
it is apparently.
It's funny to be this clinical about laughter. About yeah. That laughter sounds natural.
I always
Discussion.
scary.
That sounds good. I'll
You know, I was always taught that
Totally gone off rails here.
yeah, we all.
And I don't know if you can tell, whenever you see a screen flash kind of like that, that means I'm saving. So I'm saving, I'm just hitting Control S after every single keystroke I do, pretty much. So I'm saving every few seconds, if not even more than that. You see right there, it's just kind of a habit. I just end up doing it a whole lot because I have been burned before by not saving. So I've just built it into my muscle memory at this point. So I'll make this cut, make save, highlight, make save, select a different tool, make save. And to be fair, Audition has not crashed on me in a long time, but better be safe than sorry, right? I know, like, this is probably boring to watch, but it is satisfying. That is for sure. And I know I'm speaking a little less through this part, but hopefully you can see see the process and see what I'm doing. There's just not a whole lot to explain. I've already kind of explained it all, so I don't feel the need to continue to just explain myself as I'm going. That would do more harm than good.
You saved them.
As I explain my non-explaining.
Wow.
Hope nobody's gonna be in trouble.
Wow.
Oh my
Yeah, you
goodness,
do
I hope
that.
nobody's gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, you
Goodness,
do
I hope
that.
nobody's gonna be in trouble.
And I know, like, this is overlapping, but it doesn't matter. You can't really hear that anyways. I'll get rid of it just because I'm looking at it, but usually I probably wouldn't even bother with that. Nobody's going to hear.
Some of them have safety wires.
Wow.
Whoa.
Safety wires.
Wow.
Great.
Unanimous.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, right. In the
Yes.
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 we need the safety wire oil filters.
Yes.
Yes. Where all the
Okay. There we go. That's all of the chunks stripped, silenced, ready to go. I think I am going to take another quick break just to give my mind a bit of a rest. It's taxing, just going through and really hyper focusing on all, like, making sure everything is strip silenced correctly. And, like I said, I'm not trying to do it perfectly, but I'm still trying to do a good job to make my life a little easier in the edit. And so I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break for now, and I will be back. All right, cool. Let's get this thing edited. So what we'll do actually is because we've cut so many clips up back here, anytime I would make an edit, like if let's say I want to cut this word, I hit Z to ripple delete, and look how long it takes to do that. And then I want to drag these clips, it takes a little longer, and that's just because there are so many. I just hit Control Z and you saw how long it took. And that's because there are so many individual clips now. Whereas if this stuff was not cut up, if this was all one long clip, it wouldn't take that long. But the CPU, it's very CPU intensive to move all of these clips all at once. So what I do for each one of these, I will move it to the very end, edit it, and then move it back to its place. And how I'm doing this, moving the fade envelope on both sides, is if you hold Alt when you are fading.
Hi, I'm Mike Bush.
I'm Paul New.
It needs a little bit of...
And I'm Colleen Sterling. Welcome to Ask the A&Ps from AOPA.
And this gap doesn't matter because we're going to add some music. We're going to add some music in here, so I'll just keep this as
On
is.
Ask the A&Ps, we
We try to tackle your toughest maintenance questions, occasionally, or tackle
questions, occasionally, or questions, occasionally.
No. He never really finishes the word, does he?
Questions, occasionally, office maintenance questions, occasionally.
Interesting.
Occasionally.
Trying to just get rid of this middle one.
Maintenance questions, occasionally.
I think that's as good as we're going to get with that.
occasionally, or tackle actually succeeds in tackling.
Succeeds in tackling something. So if you have a toughie, please
email us at
please
Gotta pay attention to that breath. We kind of cut the breath off a little bit here.
please
It's not the breath technically, I guess, isn't cut off, but the breath leading into this word, it just sounds too abrupt. So we'll try and move things around.
please email me. Please
And
email.
that already sounds better. Even just that little movement right there, that sounds better to me. Pay attention to breaths. I've said it a million times, but milliseconds matter. Milliseconds matter.
It's at podcast.
podcasts at aopa.org for a chance to get on the show.
Yeah.
Please follow or subscribe.
Subscribe to be alerted for the next show so you can find out which tackles we've missed.
Sorry. We've missed. Sorry. Got to follow the theme.
Blocked.
It's not football season, Paul. Jeez.
Don't you block a tackle? I don't know.
I get it. Block end. And if you'd like to get on our email,
Or block end. And if you'd like to get on our email to get on our email list
for a monthly newsletter and other cool stuff.
for
We have 2, 4, and I talked about this before, but fading in these consonant sounds, these high frequency Fs or S's or T's, or even like the hard ones like G, like G or D. It's easier to cut in those places because the ear can't tell the difference between those high frequency consonant sounds. If we were to cut, like, let's listen to this.
list for a monthly
That sounds flawless
list for a
to my ear. But if we were to cut like in the O or in the R, like,
for a
and you know, they're just not even. And you can see the waveforms are pretty similar, honestly. But you'll definitely
email list for a
email
email list for a
Yeah, sometimes it works, I guess. But I'm eating my hat here.
list for a monthly
newsletter.
I just prefer to make it on the F sound.
Other cool stuff. Easiest way to do that.
Easiest way to do stuff. Easiest way to do that is to text the word savvy
SAVVY to 33777 on your smartphone, and it will ask you for your name and email address and put you on our list. So text savvy SAVVY to 33777.
and put you on our list. So text savvy.
Got the T sound here. We can cut.
So text savvy.
SAVVY to 33777 to put yourself on the list. One of our clients.
One of our self on the list. One of our clients
Was flying home.
was
Flying home in his Cirrus. It was probably going to be one of the last flights before the airplane went into annual inspection at his regular shop at home. And he experienced a rough running engine.
and he
Keep a little bit more of that breath, just to be safe.
and he
Experienced a rough running engine and noticed that the CHT on cylinder number 2 was rising above 400 degrees. So he
And I'm just, as I'm listening, I'm going through and fading these in and out. I really wish that Audition had an option to make those fades automatically, like when you make the cut. I know like Pro Tools has something like that. That would be nice, Audition.
So he decided to make a precautionary landing. He actually declared emergency and made a precautionary landing at an airport that was not his intended destination. At an airport that was not his intended destination. It was a pretty good size airport. And put his airplane in the shop there and asked them, explained that he had a rough running engine and he was seeing high CHT in cylinder number 2 and asked them to investigate and to try to figure out what was causing the rough running engine. Whereupon he rented the car and drove home because he had business meetings and stuff. So
the shop and stuff. So the shop called him and said, well,
we borescoped your cylinders. Cylinder number 2 definitely had detonation going on because the exhaust valve is completely white. And we're pretty sure that the reason is that there's an exhaust in the turbocharger that was letting exhaust impinge.
That was
letting exhaust impinge on cylinder number 2, causing the elevated CHT and the
number 2 causing
the elevated CHT and the detonation. And so we're going to have to replace that turbocharger. And by the way, your other turbocharger is leaking oil like crazy, so we really need to replace both turbochargers. And then we're going to have to change cylinder number 2. And
then
just fix the problem.
I think we need to really at all.
And we're gonna have to change cylinder number 2.
Just
and
fix the problem.
Cylinders are really hard to get now.
I usually would get rid of that. I'm feeling like keeping it for some reason.
cylinders are really hard to get now. And turbochargers are very hard to get overhauled because there's a parts availability problem.
Turbochargers.
I'll try and get rid of that. It's pretty close.
And turbochargers are.
It sounds a little bit abrupt to me.
Hard to get now. And turbo.
Oops, don't want to move that clip.
And turbocharger.
And
turbochargers. And turbochargers.
Because he has like that, he just has some background noise happening that we can only get rid of so much background noise for these tracks. They're not in, they're not in professional studios. They're just in their shops. So it adds to the authenticity, but it also makes it a little bit harder when you're editing, which means we probably can't get rid of this.
And turbochargers,
which is okay. Hard to get overhauled because there's a parts availability problem. So the owner said, "Well, actually, I have another engine."
I have another
engine sitting in my hangar that had a prop strike. I can grab one of the cylinders off of that and have it sent to you. And because it takes too long to get turbochargers overhauled.
Takes.
And because
because it takes too long to get.
Look at all that.
Long to get turbochargers
overhauled. I'll just buy 2 new turbochargers and have them sent to you. So now this progresses and the shop says, well, while we were borescoping your cylinders, we couldn't help but notice that 3 of your cylinders, not the number 2, but other cylinders have cracks in them. And so it's just, okay. So finally this guy...
in them.
And so it's just, okay.
The cracks.
So it's just...
The cracks.
So it's just, okay. So finally this...
And what I'll do here sometimes is just let Colleen say what she's going to say and maybe still have it a little bit overlapped.
So
the cracks theory.
So it's just, okay.
And I think that actually sounds better rather than Mike just trying to, or not try, just talking over Colleen. We get what they were both saying, and because he said, and he was thinking anyways, so this little extra gap is okay. It still sounds natural.
Oh, the cracks theory.
So it's just, okay.
So finally this guy
remembers that he's a savvy client.
He says, well, maybe I better tell that. So he opens the ticket, describes what's happened.
So he opens the ticket, describes what's
happened and how deep the hole he has dug now for himself. One of our most experienced account managers gets involved, starts talking to the shop. Gets involved.
In these little it's basically like an
gets involved. Managers gets involved.
We could probably, now that there's not the before and that little noise that he makes.
Account managers gets involved
because he makes this little like right at the end.
managers.
We know that there's a word coming right after this noise. That's just how the brain works. You make this little noise right before you have another thought immediately. So when we leave this long gap here, that's a little bit confusing to our minds. It sounds a little bit unnatural because it sounded like he was coming in right with another word, and then there's the long gap like he was thinking, which there was because the next word was and then there was a long pause. But we got rid of the and we got rid of this other noise as well. So the thought needs to be fluid.
Account managers gets involved, starts
talking to the shop, tells the shop to stop work and not do anything else until we get this thing resolved. Says, okay.
Until we get this thing. Until.
Rather have that.
Until we get
this thing resolved. Says, okay, so you're saying that there's detonation cylinder. So you're saying that there's detonation cylinder number 2, you want to pulse
2, which is worst
scope images. So, and I particularly like to see scope images of the piston crown, which is where you'd look for detonation. Well, we didn't take an image of the piston crown, but we've got images of the valves. You want to see those? Because the exhaust valve is just white, and so yes.
Because the
exhaust valve is just white, and so yes. Let's see your valve images. So they send a valve image, and he looks at the valve image that's labeled exhaust valve, and sure enough, it's white as a sheet. There's no asymmetry on it or anything. It's just white. And then he looks at the second image that is marked intake valve, and it's a perfect bullseye pizza. On the intake? What's wrong with this picture, guys? They got them switched? Yes, of course they got them.
A little bit of a gap.
Pizza.
On the intake?
What's wrong with...
And like during a conversation, these gaps make sense because everybody's thinking. But in a podcast, we want to cut those gaps down. A podcast is not a real life conversation. A podcast is a heightened conversation.
Pizza.
On the intake?
What's wrong with this picture, guys?
Yes.
That's way too loud for me right now. In fact, I'm going to turn that down a little bit.
I mean, most people...
Apparently dudes don't know the difference between an intake valve and an exhaust. Got my airplane out of there now. Wow. So we're in big trouble. So our account manager then says, okay.
Get both of these so's together.
Big trouble. So our account manager
And then says, okay, what's the status of the airplane? How much is taken apart? Well,
what's the state? What's the state of
the airplane? How much is taken apart? Well, we pulled the baffles off. We pulled the intercooler off. We dropped the exhaust. We haven't removed the turbocharger yet. We removed the turbocharger yet. The spark plugs are out, and we haven't pulled cylinder number 2 because you told us to stop before we got to pull cylinder number 2. Thank God. That means they didn't get to look at the can. Yeah. so we say, okay, we'll put the airplane back together, and you know we're gonna get it out of there. But just to make matters worse, by now this has been going on so long that the airplane's out of manual. So they say no, we're not gonna put the airplane back together. Why not? Well, because it's not airworthy. It's got a cylinder with detonation in it. It's got leaking turbo. It's got cracks in other cylinder heads, and we're not gonna put it back together. Well. We're talking to the FSDO at this point.
back together? Well, we're talking to the
get rid of all those stutters.
We're talking to the FSDO
at this point.
The pilot.
Yeah.
The pilot declared.
A lot of repeats there.
The pilot
declared emergency, so this is on the FSDO's radar screen.
And generally, whenever I'm cutting repeated words like that, I'll take the last one because I want this transition here to be the most natural. It's sometimes it doesn't work. Most of the time, it does. But that's generally my thought process is if there's a repeated word, I will take the last one.
Pilot declared emergency, so this is on the FSDO's radar screen. And we work our way up to the head of the FSDO. and describe the situation.
And describe and describe
The situation and ask whether they can help this guy out of this pickle that he's in. And the
help this and
ask whether they can
ask whether and ask whether they can help this they can
help this guy out of this pickle that he's
pickle
in. And the head of FISDO says correctly, the FAA has no authority to make a shop do work it doesn't want to do. There is no regulation that says if you take something apart, you have to put it back together. He said what we will do for you is if you can get the airplane out of the shop. And
he said
he said what we will do for you is if you can get the airplane out of the shop and you can get some mechanic to sign a safe to ferry
to sign a safe to ferry
logbook entry, I guarantee you we will give you a ferry permit. But that's all we can do for you. That's all we can do, yeah. So we're talking to the shop and saying, well, can we move this to another hangar so that we can find somebody to put it back together? No, you can't. And we call the airport authority.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
And we call the airport authority.
You can't. We call the airport.
That's a case where I did not get rid of the last one. So again, rule of thumb is being denied here. I'm taking the opposite of my advice.
No, you can't. And we call the airport authority. The airport authority says, well, we own all the hangars on the field, but we've dealt.
It's just all up to your ear. If it sounds good, if it sounds natural, then it's good.
To this FBO, the authority to do all the renting and leasing of hangars, so we don't do any of that stuff. So basically, monopoly. They call it monopoly. Yeah. So, well, can you put it out on the ramp? And we'll it's only going to take.
Can you put it out on the ramp? Put it out on the ramp.
And it's only going to take like 2 hours of work to put this airplane back together. No, you're not allowed to work on airplanes on the ramp. And we control the ramp. Well, can we get a mechanic to put it back together in your maintenance hangar where it is right now? Oh, no, our insurance won't allow that. Well, yeah, I guess we can, but we'll have to assign a supervisor to look over your shoulder. And we're going to have to charge you for that. So that sounds like the best deal so far to get this airplane extracted. So now we're trying to wrestle up a mechanic to go there and put this airplane back together. What airport should I not mayday into?
It's two so's that
and put this.
So tell me, what airport should I?
And actually, because she's overlapping here.
Put this airplane back together.
So tell me.
You can hear Colleen on Mike's track.
And put this airplane back together.
So tell me. What airport should I not?
We got to keep it this way.
Tell me, what airport should I not mayday into? We got to be careful here because if it's a really interesting place, I may want to go. I hesitate to say anything actionable. Okay. Oh my God. It's a large airport in Vermont. Oh, I know where it is. Interesting. Okay. I know exactly where it is. But anyway, this is just like, it is true that the FAA has no authority and there is no regulation that says if you take something apart, you have to put it back together. But it's strikes me as being really bad form. For a shop to take something apart. And the first thing they started to say is, well, we can't sign the airplane off because it's unairworthy. And we explained to them that the regulation does not say that. The regulation says if you work on an airplane, you must make a maintenance record entry and you must sign it. And your signature is not saying anything about the airworthiness of the airplane. It's only saying that you memorialize the work you did accurately.
That you
memorialize the work you did accurately and that you did the work satisfactorily, and that's all it means. So then they backed off from saying.
So then they.
Don't need that.
It applies only to the work you did.
So then
they backed off from saying like we can't sign it off to saying, well, we're not going to put that together. That's just plain being stubborn and isn't that terrible? Uncooperative, yeah. So we'll get this poor guy extracted, but they're not making it easy. The FAA's been very cooperative. I was worried that the shop might have poisoned the well with the FISDO and that the FISDO wouldn't issue a ferry permit. But no, we've talked to the top guy at the FISDO and he assured us that if we can get the airplane back together and we can get some A&P to sign a safe to ferry, a logbook entry, that they will issue a ferry permit. So I can only imagine how this would go if it continued into an annual. I sort of gathered that this FISDO has had some experiences with the shop before, so they seem pretty sympathetic to this.
Sort of gathered that this FISDO has had
some experiences with the shop before, so they seem pretty sympathetic to this aircraft owner. Actually, almost makes you not want to declare an emergency, which is the wrong thing, right? Yeah, I mean, I can't fault the guy for making a precautionary landing, and I can't ever fault him for declaring an emergency. Although when you do declare an emergency, the FISDO gets involved because they have to call you and they have to get your statement and they have to fill out a bunch of paperwork. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It just triggers that. Well, it's unfortunate. I declared my share of emergencies over the years, so. Nothing ever bad has happened from it. Yeah, we always say maydays are free. If it looks bad, it could get worse really quickly. Declare the mayday and get on the ground and take the consequences. Anyway, I think we should add a new regulation to Part 43 that says if you take something apart, you have to put it back.
It sounds like with this, and then he's coming into a different word, and we know he's coming into a different word because we can see it here. But this is the end of the clip.
Right.
That's great. Intro done and dusted. So we move that back to the intro slot. And now we're getting into the questions.
Our first question is from Mike, who is frustrated with a feature on his engine monitor. I can't wait to hear this one. Go ahead, Mike. Okay, so about a year and a half ago, I put a lot of...
About
It's always great when they start their questions with, Yeah, I would too. It's just funny.
okay.
Head, Mike.
Okay, so about a year and a half.
Really, the end of the introduction to the callers here. This is just kind of a laugh. So it's about a second. We'll go 0.9 seconds. I know you can't see the duration because of my fat head.
Okay, so about a year and a half ago, I put a lot of avionics into a Cessna 150. And that's cool. It's a 1971 Aerobat with O200. Awesome. So when that came out, it had like an EGT.
Awesome.
So when that came out,
Awesome.
so
And unfortunately, I got to get rid of that awesome because there's a cough.
100.
Oh.
So when that came out,
Something doesn't sound quite right, does it?
Oh.
So when that came 200.
Oh.
So when that came
Sounds
out,
great.
it had like
An EGT that covered all four cylinders and oil temperature that was either green or not. And so it's...
And I would normally like to get rid of this. People are laughing. So nature of the beast can't get rid of it.
It's evolved. My question's kind of...
Get
Rid of all that.
and so it's
evolved. My question's kind of evolved with all the new gauges out there that are on this. The key one that has frustrated me is the oil temperature sensor. And so I did some digging and some researching. And anyway,
sensor. And so I did.
You can see how the waveform doesn't. This whole and so it's just the and are pretty much one word.
And so I
And like, theoretically, you might be able to get rid of this.
And so I,
but with this like long kind of drawn out breath, he's not with that kind of a breath. He's not coming into this sudden of a word.
And so
he's not coming in. Like I've said before, the velocity of the breath does not match the velocity of the word. So we could spend an hour fiddling with trying to get that cut to work, but rather than that, I don't think the and sounds that bad anyways. So
and
so I did some digging and some researching. And anyways, it would start flashing at me cautionary yellow if it was at 200, and then it would give me a warning at like 210 for the oil temperature. I initially the upgrade.
I initially
get rid of both of those.
the
upgrade
finally
came back to me in November.
And there I just saw that this waveform almost matched identically to this waveform. So that's why I just kind of already had it highlighted before it even got to there. Because those two waveforms match. And I bet you this is an too.
It came back to me in November.
And so I
never worried about it until about March when air temperatures were reaching 70 degrees, 60 degrees, and also the oil temperature was getting
So you can kind of see, like, this one matched pretty well. And usually the are kind of on their own like this. Sometimes this is like an and, sometimes it's not always an but you can usually tell if they're all on their lonesome.
getting what I can tell is normal.
Normal temperatures. But listen to you guys a lot. So, anyways, I started doing some research.
Anyways,
Get rid of that.
anyways, I started. So, anyways, I
It sounds a little bit.
anyways,
It sounds a little bit weird, but I think that's more of the internet trying to compensate for that loud and honestly, I'd just rather cut the out there, even though it sounds a little bit weird, but that's just the internet.
anyways,
I started doing some research, and the Continental Manual for the O200.
the
Continental Manual.
You can hear the reverb on that. You guys hear the reverb? Gotta keep that
the Continental
Manual for the O200 says that normal operating temperature for the oil is 150 to 170 with a maximum of 225, and the POH says it's 240, and that 150 to 170.
I knew one of those were
and that
150 to 170 from the Continental Manual seems really low listening to you guys because I think I hear, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you want to get it up to at least 180 degrees to boil lots of water. I feel like I hear that a lot from you guys. So I guess I have CHT monitors on it now and EG.
Generally, an looks one of two ways. It looks like this, with this big round bit at the front. It looks kind of like a pear, right? This big round bit at the front, and then a little skinnier bit there. Or it looks like this, which is kind of a flat, drawn out, like they're thinking. This is like, this is more, that's a more traditional, if you could say. I've dealt with a lot of ums, if you can't tell. And I know I'm saying a lot, but I don't care. Or they look like this, like I said.
I have CHT monitors on it now and EGT and everything else. So how important is that oil temperature and what should a realistic maximum be before it starts flashing at me telling me go land right now? Well, my first thought, is this, the engine monitor you've installed, is
Gotta
this
get rid of that.
Well, my first but is this
It's tough. We'll see.
Is this first thought? Is this well? My first thought is this.
No.
First thought is this.
The engine monitor
No,
you installed,
we'll keep
is
it that way.
primary, meaning your old gauges have been removed? Absolutely. Yeah, it's a GI 275. Okay.
I think we can get rid of that.
yeah, it's a GI2.
No, can't get rid of that.
Okay, so the only readings that should be on that
Gauge.
gauge are what were on the original gauge in the airplane. So it has a green arc and it has a red line. If I remember right, and I'm not a 152 aficionado, but I don't think the original gauge had any yellow markings. So they should not be in your engine monitor. It's supposed to be helpful, but it's not required. Well, and the original gauge probably had a red line, but it probably didn't have a number on it, so you didn't know what the hell it was when it got to red line. So there are really two questions here. One question, and Paul, maybe you can weigh in on this. This is oil temperature for an O200. And normally when we talk about oil temperature recommendation...
And then normally
when we talk about oil temperature recommendations and say we like to say between 180 and 200, we're talking about, an engine that has an oil cooler and
an engine. We're talking about an engine that
has an oil cooler and a vernitherm and stuff. And the O200 doesn't have that, right? It's a
tank. It doesn't
have an oil cooler. Yeah, I don't think.
Ooh, plane starting up here at Paul's.
Doesn't have that, right? It's a tank. It doesn't have an oil cooler. Have that, right?
So now we need to make the beginning and the ends of the clip a little longer for Paul so it can gradually kind of fade in and fade out so it's not super abrupt. Usually we can get away with short fade and fade outs because, the background noise isn't most of the audio.
It doesn't have an oil
cooler. Yeah, I don't think it probably has a vernitherm, does it? Or maybe.
And unfortunately, we can't really, I would probably normally get rid of this little bit here. Just to keep things tidy, but it's going to sound weird.
Oil cooler.
Yeah.
I don't think it probably has a vernitherm, does it? Well, maybe it does.
Yeah.
I don't think it probably has a vernitherm, does it? Well, maybe it does.
Yeah. Boy, I'm not an O200 guy.
What would a Vernotherm do? It wouldn't send the oil anywhere, right?
Because there's no oil
cooler
cooler,
to send
right?
it
There's
to.
no
Yeah.
cooler.
Yeah, I don't know. But at any rate, it may be that
The numbers for an O200 are different than the ones that we usually talk about because the O200 is a dry sump engine and it doesn't have an oil cooler. So you'd have to, I mean, officially,
Pear-shaped them.
so
you'd have to, I mean, officially, the POH normally trumps the engine stuff. I don't know, I mean, whether that's a good thing, but that's the way, I think that's the
word.
works. Does yours actually have a POH? Oh, yes. It's not an owner's manual, it's an actual POH. No, it's not an AFM. It's not an airplane flying manual. Right, but I believe it's a pilot's operating handbook. That's it. Yep. Okay. All right, because 74, Cessna made the transition in the mid-70s, and most of them didn't happen until 76. Okay. And I messed up
I believe it's a pilot's operating handbook.
That's it. Yep.
Okay. All right, because 74,
Cessna made the transition in the mid-70s, and most of them didn't happen until
76.
Okay.
What?
And
Really?
I messed up. Mine's a
And this usually doesn't. This is a pretty rare occurrence where we get so much background noise. But like I said, it adds to the authenticity. It's a little bit more of an inconvenience for us.
And-
But it's not bad.
mine's a 71. One.
I have a POH. I have a
We can get this like kind of weird click that we can try and get rid of.
I have a POH on my 71. What are
Yeah,
you
no,
talking about, Paul?
pretty much all airplanes have POHs. It's
they went to airplane flight manuals in order to. See, originally all limitations had to be placards, and gradually over time we got more and more placards to the point where there wasn't any more real estate to put placards on. And at that point, the FAA invented this thing called airplane flight manual and said, oh well, we can put limitations in the airplane flight manual. And the airplane flight manual is a part of the POH for airplanes that were built, after the mid 70s, like Paul said. Well, in Mike's airplane, and the AFM is the only part of the POH that's FAA approved. So what Mike has with his airplane isn't.
Don't need that first interjection.
AFM is the only part
Part of the POH that's FAA approved. So what Mike has with his airplane isn't. It's a owner operating manual. It's not called a POH.
It's a.
Owner operating manual. It's not called a POH. It's not in a binder.
It's not called a POH. It's not in a. It's not in a.
I want to get rid of this little throat clear, but
It's not.
with the background noise too, I don't think.
POH. It's not called a POH. It's not in a binder.
Sounds almost like a mic bump or something.
Called a POH. It's not in a binder.
Yeah, I'll keep it.
Called a POH. It's not in a binder.
A lot of the old.
Not perfect, but
A lot of the old Cessnas.
we got a lot of background noise anyways.
It wasn't labeled as a POH. It was.
It was called an owner's. Gosh, was owner's. Typically operator handbook or same thing. And real fan. It wasn't serial number specific. It didn't. Yeah. So anyway, that's I was asking. But the other thing is the nuisance alerts on the TI-275. And the installer is supposed to set those up. But I'll give you a little secret. If you press the inner knob in. And then,
Hello. We won't keep that.
didn't, yeah.
So anyway, that's I was asking, but
the other
And you know what? We'll just get rid of this so because there's a throat clear there anyways.
it didn't. Yeah. Anyway, that's I was asking.
Yeah, sounds good.
The other thing is.
but the other thing is
Asking,
the
The other thing is the nuisance alert.
but the other thing is the nuisance.
And actually, because he kind of trails off and it sounds like he's going to start talking again, we will move this up a little bit so it sounds like Mike is interjecting a little bit more.
anyway, that's I was asking, but
The other
The other thing is the nuisance alert on the TI-275.
Sounds like he's like coming in to rescue Paul's point, you know.
and
The installer is supposed to set those up, but I'll give you a little secret. If you press the inner knob,
you press
the inner knob in, and then power the instrument up, it will magically go into installer setup mode, and then you can go in there and you can change all that stuff. Now, you're not supposed to. It's supposed to be the AI shop that does that, but I won't tell. Well, so I took it to. I moved from Norfolk to Omaha, Nebraska.
Well, actually,
I took it to. I moved from North.
we can get rid of that whole sentence.
Well, so I moved from Norfolk.
Mm.
Yeah, So I moved from
Yeah, the energy doesn't quite match from sentence to sentence. So
I took it. So I took it
to, I moved from Norfolk,
yeah, we gotta keep it.
Nebraska area, and I took it to a shop that
to Omaha.
Nebraska area, and I took it to a shop that I trust. And not an equity field that just got the unfortunate tornadoes that came through. But anyway, so I took it to the shop there, and they test the thermostat. And
Up there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I took, but
Yeah.
but anyways,
so I took it to the shop there, and they test the thermostat, and maybe the thermostat would have been wrong. And then they went in,
and then they went.
and they adjusted the all the way up to red line, no cautionary, all the way up to red line at 240. All the way up to red line, no cautionary, all the way up to red line at 240. Because that's what the owner's manual says. Yeah, that's exactly how it's supposed to be done. Yeah, okay. And I just didn't know. I was trying to figure out, like, okay, is that the right answer, or is that the answer that makes me stop annoying them? No, it's true to the original gauge. It's what the original gauge is. Yeah, that's the requirement. So when you put in the digital, it has to mimic the original. Okay, all right, yeah.
Wow.
It has to mimic the original.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And it just shows the numbers so I can see
Oh wow, that's loud.
how close.
It doesn't show yellow cautionary anymore, which is I'm happy with. Right? Okay. And sometimes there's conflicting information. That if you look, for example, at the engine tech certificate data sheet, it'll say one thing, and then if you look in the airplane maintenance manual, or
in the
airplane maintenance manual or something, it'll say another thing. And the general rule is that the aircraft manufacturer's guidance trumps the engine manufacturer's guidance. Yeah, there may be changes in the
guidance.
Yeah, there may be
changes in the
Guidance trumps
the engine manufacturer's guidance. Yeah, there may be changes in the installation of the engine that change the parameters that the engine manufacturer had in mind. Right. Yeah, and one of the things I was
had in mind.
All right. Yeah, and one of the things I was wondering is, like, probe
placement. If you're testing it right when it's coming out of the engine versus when it's an oil sump or that kind of thing. Right. Well, and again.
or that kind of thing.
Right. Well,
And again, on wet sump engines that have oil coolers, normally the probe is pretty close to where the oil cooler discharges engine into the oil galleries. So it's at the coolest part of the cycle. I don't know where the probe is on an O200.
so it's at the coolest, close to
I wasn't really listening.
Engines that have the probe is
normally the
probe is pretty close to where.
Is pretty close.
And this is kind of similar to what we had before, where he makes this little noise, so we know a word is coming right up, so we can't have a big gap.
The probe is pretty close to where.
Yeah, that doesn't quite work, does it?
Is
You know what we'll do is cut that little word out.
probe is.
That sounds weird, doesn't it?
Probe is pretty close to. Probe is the probe is
Pretty close to where the oil cooler. Pretty close to where the oil cooler discharges into the oil galleries. So it's at the coolest part of the cycle. I don't know where the probe.
I
don't know where the probe is on an O200, but it doesn't have an oil cooler, so it's got to be some different place. And the probe also, the probe also has to be in the same location as the original.
Oh, jeez. Okay, we're gonna have to make some cuts here.
And the probe, yeah, the probe also.
See if we can do this. Hopefully it doesn't sound too bad.
And the probe also has to be in.
Yeah, you can't tell that the background noise is cut there. Sometimes if there's a lot of background noise, like a sudden cut like that, will sound really bad.
And the probe also has to be in the same location as the original probe. So you can't do it on your engine, but say on the Lycoming, there's a couple of places that you can put the temperature probe. But if you're installing the engine monitor as the primary system, the oil temperature probe, or all the probes for that matter, if they're duplicating the original instruments, the probes have to be in the original locations. Interesting. All right, Mike, we're going to cut you off.
Locations.
Interesting. All right, Mike, we're going to cut you off there.
I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling us about your wonderful 152.
Yeah.
About your wonderful.
It's kind of a weird noise.
For for telling us about your wonderful 152.
Yeah, it's
or
very
150,
cool.
150. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yep. All right,
Okay.
guys.
All right. Thanks for dialing in, too.
Yep. See you, Mike.
Get rid of some of that. A little bit of an awkward pause.
All right,
Okay.
guys.
All right. Thanks for dialing in, too.
Yep. See you, Mike.
See ya.
Get rid of that. Move this up. I like the goodbyes to be, fairly brief or fairly quick. Yeah, fairly brief.
All right. Thanks for dialing in, too.
Yep. See you, Mike.
See ya.
You get that internet lag sometimes, and it can sound a little awkward, more awkward than it really was. All right, question 1, done. I'll do this sometimes, go through and add the fades before. Because this one I know I'm kind of cleaning stuff up too.
Yeah.
One size fits all.
Yep.
Right.
Get rid of some of that, clean up a little bit there. And this is what I was talking about. We don't have to be totally perfect in the strip silencing phase. Just making our lives a little easier. A little too much. We never want to fade into the word either. If you noticed, all of my fades, you can see this little line. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it. Hopefully, you can see this little line down, straight down. And that line should never cross the beginning of the word 99% of the time. This, we're going to have to, because of this is a little tongue click that some people do when they're starting a word. So we got to get rid of that. Oh, this is see, I've already made the fades here because I needed to. If you remember in the strip silence phase, and this is another little mouth click.
Shouldn't be
And
that just shouldn't be that.
Oh no, it's not a mouth click, but either way, don't need it.
right. Yeah.
All right, that's probably enough. We'll do a couple more. That's probably enough. I don't need to put the fades in every single clip, just enough so we have a little headroom here.
Okay, our next question is from David, who is challenging our maintenance norms. And I love this question. I love it.
I love it.
Go ahead, David. Tell us what you got.
Hello, Colleen.
Mike and Paul, thanks for having me on. So my questions are basically in two parts. One stems from Mike's articles in the AOPA Pilot Magazine covering the critical mechanics shortage, and the second article about owner preventive maintenance. So the first article, it was a telling story about a...
The first
article, it was a telling story...
So the first article,
it was a telling story about a shop owner who was beleaguered because his schedule for annual inspections went out at least a year. It sounds like and he was having trouble getting acute problems in, so for his regular customers. So, and
the first question,
I don't even think we need that "and" in there
regular customers. So,
because he already has the "so," which is kind of a transitionary word.
the first question
really stems from that, and that is, how did the FAA come up with the time interval between inspections for the aircraft? Was it empirical evidence? Do they have some kind of arbitrary, a year sounds good, it's easy to remember, it's like having your annual physical, if you do it around Christmas, yeah. Or was there political or even industry pressure to do that? David, I think you know the answer to that. there is obviously no empirical evidence. And is that true, Mike? Are we being facetious?
that
Well, David, I think you know the answer to that.
There is obviously no empirical evidence. And is that true, Mike? Are we being facetious? Of course it's true. If you were designing a generic inspection program.
A generic
inspection program for smaller airplanes. Because larger airplanes.
If you hear that weird, kind of robotic noise, I hit shuttle right twice, which is putting it at 4 times speed. And the CPU just needs a second to catch up to that. And then, so kind of that little robotic sound you hear is just the lag. And then if you do that, it will play at 4 times speed, but then it's going to be a little bit behind. What you're hearing is going to be a little bit behind where the playhead is at. So I just do it 2 times speed.
Large
airplanes, multi-engine turbines, and airplanes above 12,500 pounds, those are all required to follow the manufacturer's recommended inspection program. And those are always phased inspections, where there are certain things that are inspected quite often, and there are other things that are inspected less often, and there are other things that are inspected at long intervals, which is kind of what makes sense. And we really be nice if we were doing that for little airplanes too, but in the FAA's infinite wisdom, they said
be nice if we were, and
makes sense. And we really be nice if we were doing that for little airplanes too, but in the FAA
in the
FAA's infinite wisdom, they set a cutoff that said if
they set a cutoff
that said if it's multi-engine turbine or over 12.5, then you do phase inspections, and if it's anything else, you do annual inspections.
then you
do phase inspections, and if it's anything else, you do annual inspections. And the annual thing is, I'm sure, completely arbitrary, because it's way too often for some things, and it's probably not often enough for other things. You don't want to go a year between looking at things firewall forward, because they're all trying to burn themselves and shake themselves to death all the time. You probably don't want to go a year looking at wheels and brakes, because those are kind of high stress items. On the other hand, it would be perfectly fine to go 2 or 3 years between checking cable tensions and stuff.
between checking cable
checking cable tensions and stuff. They're things that just don't deteriorate very rapidly. And phase inspections work that way, but for small airplanes, they just arbitrarily say you have to inspect every molecule of the airplane once a year. But it's another case of one size fits all. Yes, right. And like all airplanes, but unlike one size fits.
Yes.
Right. And like all airplanes, but unlike one size.
Again, we'll make sure they don't overlap.
And like that, all airplanes don't fly the same amount of time.
but unlike
And they're right after each other. And that's because Mike did start talking at the same time. So we want to still make it seem like, he's kind of interjecting and just getting his thoughts out really quickly, which, that happens in conversation. But when 2 people are overlapping each other, usually it doesn't sound that good.
Fly the same amount of time. But unlike one size fits all TBOs, we don't have the opportunity to.
we don't have the opportunity.
Oh my.
We don't have
I don't think I'm going to be able to get rid of that first one.
TBOs. We don't have the opportunity to
That's okay.
to blow
Blow them off. Right. We actually have to do these annual inspections. And I guess the 100-hour inspection was based on an average, like flying 100 hours a year. That's what an annual inspection is trying to catch, is about 100 hours.
They just made that number up. 100 hours. They just made that number up too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a nice round number. That
100 hours. They just made that number up too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a nice round number. That
has to tell you something. If it's too convenient.
Get rid of that.
That has to
tell you something. If it's too conveniently even, then there's got to be some arbitrary decision making going on. But we still have now, though, the critical shortage of mechanics, and the solution for that would seem to be a combination of things. Number one, obviously more mechanics. You have to make more of them, and that's an ongoing process. Well, and we have to
Process.
well, and we
And it sounds so here again. It sounds like he is going to go on to say something else. So we'll have Mike kind of interject a little bit more.
An ongoing process.
well, and we have to convince at least some of them
to go into general aviation rather than go to airlines. That's really hard. The new mechanics that are coming out of A&P schools and stuff, they typically go to the airlines because the airlines pay better and have better benefits. It's hard to compete with. Well, it's a lot less interesting now.
Well,
it's a lot less interesting now. It's very repetitive.
It's very repetitive. It's very repetitive.
Well, and if the
Owner pilots
owner
pilots did preventive maintenance, that might shorten the time that the aircraft is in for.
it's annual.
Right. Well,
inspection.
I've written
But I think
Sounds good.
to be
forced to do more of their own preventive maintenance, and that using the Khalil interpretation that they can expand the scope of what they can do as preventive maintenance, simply because it's so hard to get your airplane into a shop now.
to
get your airplane into a shop nowadays because they're all booked up for many, many months in advance. But the FAA has no interest in solving the mechanics.
but the FAA has no interest in
I'll just get rid of that little
solving
tongue click.
the
Mechanics shortage in general aviation. I don't think that's any part of their mandate.
any part of it. Any part
Part of their mandate. I don't think they're interested in helping us with this problem. We're gonna have to figure it out.
in helping. Interested in interested in helping
Us with this problem. We're gonna have to figure it out for ourselves. And I think at least one important part.
Well, and I think
Sounds like he said something there. So this is what we do because we can't pull from here because we know it's not going to line up quite right because we've done a lot of cuts. So if we pull from afterwards, we know it's going to still line up perfectly. And what I usually do in this situation is I'll pull it forward, make a cut there so I know exactly where it was at.
us with this problem. We're gonna have to figure it out for ourselves.
Yeah. Well,
And
sorry, go ahead.
well,
Okay, yeah. So you know what? Yeah, because it sounds like he is saying like, "Oh, well, thank you for letting me go." We kind of have to keep this. Normally, I would just get rid of interjections like this, especially if it's like, "Oh, sorry, go ahead." So we'll see if this sounds better or not.
ourselves.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I think at least one important part of at least.
And I think that actually sounds better. Usually, like I said, I would get rid of stuff like that. But I think with him saying like,
well, and I think,
well, he kind of was like rebutting a little bit. And without the caller's voice, it doesn't quite make sense. So we'll keep it.
And I think
At least one important part of the solution to this problem of the general aviation mechanic shortage is for GA mechanic wages to go up. And for that to happen, shop rates are going to have to go up, and owners are going to have to not complain about that, because I would rather pay a high shop rate than have a grounded airplane because I can't get anybody to work.
I would rather
Pay a high shop rate than have a grounded airplane because I can't get anybody to work on it. So we're all going to have to face up to this. Currently, an A&P working at a GA shop.
Currently, currently.
The C sound.
Currently. An A&P
Working at a GA shop typically makes less than he would make if he was working at a Chevy dealer. And that's shameful. That just shouldn't be. And the Chevy dealer charges more per hour than the shop. I mean, except that in the automotive world, that hourly rate is concealed because everything is flat rate. Right. Yeah. And I think a lot more stuff should be flat rated at GA shops rather than everything being on the clock. And that's really hard to do in reality. Well, all people who own shops say that. Okay. Because it's true. Well, you anticipated.
Because it's true.
Well, you anticipated my next
Oh, that's interesting. Sounds like his breath is being cut off.
It's true.
Well, you anticipated my next
question, which was basically, it seems almost
Can't do anything about that.
that if you extended the time interval between inspections to something like, say, 18 months or even 2 years, but with some kind of an interval, shorter,
inspect.
Kind of repeats this SH sound.
Shorter
inspection, like a 100-hour
inspection.
like a 100-hour inspection, that takes less time, I think. What objections would you have?
What
Objections would you have to that? Do you think it would be a safety issue? And in all of your years of experience and decades of experience and thousands of airplanes, has anything come up on an annual inspection that you would have thought to be an urgent issue that needs to be addressed. Issue that needs to be addressed now. Lucky you brought the F-rate in now. Oh, yes. Sure, yeah, absolutely. And the thing, so to start with, a 100-hour inspection and an annual inspection are the exact same inspection. They take the same amount of time to perform. The only difference in the two is that an IA is the only one that's allowed to do an annual. An A&P can do 100 hours. But it's the same inspection with the same requirements. You know, rule changes are very, very, very difficult. It's extremely expensive.
It's extremely
expensive and time consuming for the FAA to change rules. It's a very complicated process. So for example, since 2009, we've had this interpretation from the FAA lawyers that say that the list of 31 preventive maintenance items.
The list of that the list of
31 preventive maintenance items is exemplary, not exhaustive, and that there are lots of other things you can do that would be considered to be preventive maintenance. But the reg still reads the way it always did, that said that, you know, the only things that are preventive maintenance right now. Now, the FAA has basically said, no, the reg doesn't mean what it says, and the advisory circular doesn't mean what it says, but they haven't changed the reg or the advisory circular because it's too expensive and hard to do that. Yeah. Well, they print the FARs every year. Why don't they just change it? No, because making a regulatory change is a very complicated process, and it's got to go out as an NPRM. And
Their
comments
job,
and
Mike.
all these
lawyers have to be involved. They made the rules, and they need to use the rules. But it is quite remarkable that, you know, the other one I love is where
that, you know,
the other one I love is where part, 4313A says that you have to follow the
part 4313 part 4313
This might not work.
part 4313
Yeah.
where part 4313
Yeah.
A says that you have to follow the methods, techniques, and practices in the current version of the manual.
That's what's great about undo, right? You can just try anything. You can try it, even if you think it's not going to quite work. Try it. It might work. You never know.
Version of the manual or ICA, and then there's an interpretation that says, oh, current doesn't mean what you thought it meant. It means current as of the time the airplane rolled out of the factory, not current as of now. But now, you know, repair stations have to have current manuals. They're required to do that. But the requirement to follow the methods, techniques, and practices in the current manual doesn't mean the same thing. That means, you know, it's
the same.
And I know he's repeating some words back here. He's stuttering a bit. I honestly don't want to get rid of every single one of those because that's the way he talks. You know, we'll get rid of most of them, like 60-70% of them. But that's the way he talks.
They're
required to do that. But the requirement,
like, you know, we're not trying to make this 100% flawless, a spotless episode, because that you know wouldn't sound natural. It wouldn't sound good to my ear, anyways.
The requirement to follow the methods, techniques, and practices in the current manual doesn't mean the same thing. That means, you know, it's sort of crazy. But they don't change the rules to clarify that. You have
to
like this one, you know, he repeats it quite a few times.
The rules to clarify that. You just have.
Which even then, can we get rid of this one?
Change the rules. Clarify that. You just.
Oh, oops.
Clarify that. You
no, that's fine. That's fine.
You have to know about the interpretations that come out of the office of Chief Counsel's office, and very few, you know, mechanics and stuff follow that sort of thing. Mike, you need to write a book called FAA for Dummies too. FAA for Dummies. Yeah, the ins and outs. I actually just did a 2-hour last week. I just did a 2-hour presentation to my FISDO, Van Nuys FISDO there.
My FISDO my FISDO my FISDO,
Van Nuys FISDO there.
And remember, every time, most of the time, like 90% of the time, when you make a cut, you wanna take it a couple seconds back, or like a second back, to listen to what that cut sounds like in context to the rest of the sentence, or to at least the couple of words beforehand that matter.
Presentation to my FISDO.
And like, see, this one, I'm not gonna get rid of that. I think that's fine.
My FISDO, Van Nuys.
My FISDO there, all the flight instructors and DPEs and stuff on maintenance regs.
on
maintenance regs, and things that people believe that aren't true.
There's some of that gap.
things that
Get rid of all this stuff here.
and things that
People believe that aren't true. Our next project might need to memorialize all this good stuff you've got, FARs for dummies. Is there no hope to relieve the mechanics crisis?
Crisis?
well, no, I think there's hope, but like I say, part of the
Part of the solution has to be
part of the solution.
Hard P.
Part of the
solution has to be that we have to pay mechanics a more reasonable wage, so that
more
reasonable wage, so that we can attract them. And to do that, we have to raise shop rates, and to do that, owners have to go along with that. There's no doubt
that there's no
We got to add more of a gap here.
along with that. There's no doubt.
Oh, okay. You can hear somebody talking.
With that, there's owners have to go along with that. There's no doubt that
Yeah, I think that sounds okay.
owners have to go along with that. There's no doubt
that if somebody wants
It does sound a little bit cut there, but that's okay. We're making a cut there. We're making a pretty major cut right there. There's several minutes worth of content between this clip and this clip. So it's not gonna sound totally perfect. But we're not trying to make this episode sound totally perfect. We're just trying to move things along so it sounds, first of all, obviously I say this all the time, but it's got to sound natural. So nobody should know that an editor was here. But also, we're trying to keep the listener engaged through the whole thing. If there's stuttering throughout the whole thing, if there's tangents, if there's a lot of then it feels longer than it really is. So we're just trying to make it feel the length of the actual podcast. If that makes sense.
with that.
there's no doubt that if somebody wanted to, they could.
That
I don't know what that was.
doubt that if somebody doubt that if
Somebody wanted to, they could come up with a better inspection program for small airplanes than the annual inspection, but nobody wants to. Yeah. Or nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or
and
nobody
David,
Yeah.
yeah.
or
and
nobody
David,
nobody in authority.
yeah.
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 Or
and
nobody
David,
nobody in authority wants to.
No, I don't even need that.
Or nobody in authority.
Yeah.
Or nobody in authority wants to.
Well, great
Wants to.
a great discussion, and thanks for taking the questions.
Yeah, I love your question because you're challenging the norms, right? Everybody accepts annual inspection, but you're saying why. So maybe if more people said why, maybe we could make a change. So thanks for stirring the pot. Yeah, we love to stir the pot.
thanks for stirring the pot.
Did those little mouth clicks.
Thanks for stirring the pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Thanks,
love to
Dave.
stir the pot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks,
All right,
David.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks,
All right,
David.
Bye-bye.
And generally, this little gap right here, I don't like to leave those little gaps. I'll just overlap them just slightly. Just a preference I have. I think it sounds a little bit nicer. A little bit more cohesive. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back and we can get these last 3 done. Get the outro in there and then put everything together. All right, we are back. Let's finish this thing out. And then assemble it and mix it and we're ready to go. So again, I'm going to start out with fading some clips in and out just to help make my life a little easier when we're going through and chopping stuff up. These videos are not exactly the most exciting thing in the world, I know, but I hope it's interesting to you podcast editors out there. Hope you can find some value in it and just see what the process looks like for me. I like to share what my process looks like, and hopefully, people will comment and tell me how to improve as well. Or show me new practices or new techniques I can use. And hopefully I can do the same for you. I'll just do a couple more clips here. We don't have to do them all. Just to, like I said, make my life a bit easier. All right, we did about halfway, so we'll call it good.
Next question is from Albert, whose airplane is missing the go from Get Up and Go. Give us that backstory, Albert. Well, we've got a Cessna 172S running out of flight school. Running out of flight school, and it was acquired a couple years ago, and it was always a little bit difficult to start.
Was always a little
bit difficult to start. Everyone would say that it would flood very easily.
And you can even see when I hit ripple delete, it takes about that long to actually delete it. And that's just because this is a longer question, so there's more clips afterwards. So it just takes the CPU that much longer to do it. So that time will shrink as we go along.
It would flood very easily, but eventually it would start. And the first start of the day, of course, was easier than the subsequent starts of the day. The first flight was always out with some difficulty, and then every other flight after that just got harder and harder to start the plane. As I mentioned, it would.
And as a
as I mentioned, it would flood very easily.
Flood.
So sometimes what I'll do, instead of ripple deleting, I will just hit Control X. And that's for me, that's my keyboard shortcut. If you want to know my keyboard shortcuts, I did a separate video on it, or you can watch the full length tutorial to get my keyboard shortcuts. But I'll hit Control X and just move everything over rather than ripple deleting, just because it actually takes less time to do that because of how much computational power it takes to ripple delete.
Flood very easily. Seemed like it would flood very easily. And this went on for months, and it just got progressively worse and worse to the point where even when it was just taxiing around on the ground, it would sputter and eventually die.
And eventually.
And this guy has a very slow paced.
Eventually die.
A lot of ums, very slow pace, and then you can see I'm still ripple deleting just because it's muscle memory, but
eventually die.
So we want to cut some of these gaps up. We want to cut a lot of these ums out just to speed things up. But again, you want to keep it sounding right. You don't want it to sound like a clip on the internet, where everything is chopped up with no gaps in between. We want it to sound natural, as I always say.
And there was one time when a student got stranded on a cross-country mission.
On a cross-country
mission, because on the taxi back, plane died and you couldn't get it restarted.
So
I'll probably shorten that up a bit
and get it restarted. At some point
we can't really do anything there. So we can't really do anything.
So
we can get rid of this first.
at some point we had to start.
We can get rid of this one.
We had to start.
Some mechanics at it, and they started. Sounds like you threw more than mechanics at it. Those things are heavy. Definitely mechanics.
Okay, there's a little bit of a gap there, and we don't really need that last little thing from Colleen.
Things are heavy.
Yeah. So
Definitely mechanics along with a lot of money. It was some of the obvious stuff. Spark plugs, adjusting the fuel.
Adjusting the
Yeah, can't
And
really.
we started replacing parts. The fuel, servo, spark plugs, magnetos. Eventually got to the point.
magnetos.
Eventually got to the point where our mechanics ran out of ideas and they said, "Well, time to replace the engine." Oh gosh. Do that. Go to the knife. Wow. Ouch. Well, you didn't do that yet, right? No. Okay, good. Wow. Well, we're not gonna let you do that. Oh man, I understand it. Yeah. So, since we did, we gave it a shot. We were looking for new ideas.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Wow. Well, we're not gonna let you do that. Oh man, I understand it. Yeah. So.
And sometimes I like to just go back because if I hear a bunch of different people talking, I'll go back and check the timing. Excuse me. I'll go back and check the timing between all of the speakers, because it just doesn't. When you're playing it in double speed like that, you don't get the full picture. If there's like a couple milliseconds too long of a pause or a half a second too long of a pause, you don't really get a good idea of that when you're at double speed, just because the timing's a little off and it's a little harder to tell. So it's kind of the same with uhs and ums. If I'm all the way over here messing with clips and I hear a bunch of people speaking at the same time or one right after another or anything like that, I'll hit S to go back to the playhead, which again is one of my keyboard shortcuts, and then check all the timing at regular speed just to make sure that it all looks and sounds good.
Oh man, I understand it. Yeah. So, since we did, we gave it a shot. We were looking for new ideas, so we threw it.
We did since we did. We
See if we can get rid of that.
we did since we did.
That sounds perfect.
Since we did.
Well, it sounds okay.
And since we did.
Yeah.
We gave it a shot.
Yeah, that sounds good.
PA, right?
Okay, so this is in a flight school environment.
I think we can get rid of that whole first thing there.
AOPA, right?
This is in a flight school environment.
This is flight school.
Okay. Would you
Get rid of that. Bring this a little closer. Whoops.
Okay. Would you please just?
That's a little too close.
Flight school.
Okay. Would you?
A little too close still.
Okay. Would you?
There we go.
Describe for me the starting procedure.
The starting the starting
Procedure that you have your teach your students.
have your
Teach your students.
teacher you teach your
Students. What the starting procedure.
what the starting what the
And get rid of that first W. Man, oh man, this is a heavy edited question.
what the starting procedure is for that engine.
It's pretty much. It's
Get rid of that first. It's like when somebody says, "Oh, interesting question." Sometimes I'll keep that. If they only say it once, I'll keep it. But it's kind of like when they say "right" all the time. If they say it once, they're probably going to say it again. So I'll just get rid of that stuff like that.
It's pretty much. I'll
answer it like this. It's pretty much out of the POH. The 172. 172S model.
I'll answer it like this. It's pretty much.
We don't need the "I'll answer it like this" because we'll just answer it.
It's pretty much out of the POH.
The 172. 172S model. Fuel injected.
172
We got a little noise there, but we'll try and fade that in.
172S model.
Fuel injected.
It's all, you don't know when that noise is coming in and out anyways. So like when you fade a noise like this in, it's not too bad.
172S model.
Fuel injected. We have them.
And we can't really get rid of that noise.
Prime it with fuel pump. And then on the startup.
On the start. And then
on the startup, give the throttle just a little bit of a crack, a little bit, maybe half inch, and then
All right, little tongue click.
And then
as it cranks, once it catches, gently put the mixture forward.
pretty much
Even that's kind of a long gap. Wow.
mixture forward. Pretty much.
That's pretty much it. Nothing too complicated. And what?
That's pretty. That's pretty much.
Get rid of all that stuff.
That's pretty much it. That's pretty much
Shit,
a little bit.
Nothing too complicated. And what are their instructions for priming? For priming, that one is mixture in.
Don't really need that. We repeated the question.
Instructions for priming.
Get rid of,
For priming.
get rid of that extra fur.
Instructions for priming.
That one is mixture in, throttle, whatever the throttle says in the POH, and then run the pump a few seconds.
few seconds until we see the
fuel flow just start to move.
Don't need that.
the fuel
Flow just start to move. Okay. Because it
move.
Okay. Because
was funny. I tried to pull a Colleen last night. You did.
Oh, you did some. Oh, you.
This little tongue click. You can't really hear it, but why not just get rid of it?
Oh, you did some research.
You did some research.
I tried to research on what the proper
Right procedure for the 172S is, and it's amazing how much stuff there is on the internet about.
It's a
Look at that. Second
it's amazing
How much stuff there is on the internet about that, and how they all contradict one another.
how they all and how they all
get rid of this and
how they all
All contradict one another. I think the best one I found was there was a YouTube video that Embry Riddle put out on their starting procedure, because they got probably the world's biggest fleet of 172Ss, and that was actually a pretty good video. But there, when I went through your list of
when I but the
we'll try and keep that butt actually. See how that sounds.
but when I went through
I think that sounds
video.
pretty good.
but when
We'll probably get rid of some of that gap there.
but when I went through your
the list
Yeah,
of
sounds good.
symptoms, a couple of things.
couple symptoms a couple
Couple of things jumped out at me, because you made the comment that
because you made the
comment that if the engine doesn't catch in the first couple of blades, it will never.
it won't
Holy cow.
will never it will never start
Unless you give it a period of time before.
a period of time
Before you attempt to restart. Am I recalling it correctly? Yeah. Okay. So that tells me that.
Shorten that up.
doing it correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
okay, so that
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, okay. So I'm assuming he was shaking his head or something before he said yeah, because how quickly he responds, it was like he was already saying yeah before that. Either that or the internet lag
Correctly.
messes up the
Correctly.
timing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That tells me
That sounds
that
good.
the engine is flooded, because that's the only thing that giving it some time would resolve. Would be excess fuel.
says fuel.
It can't be a servo.
It can't.
Get rid of that. Holy cow.
It can't.
Be a servo problem. It can't, because Lycomings are started with a mixture at idle cutoff. They're started on only the prime fuel. This is different than the way you started Continental, for example. So you're putting some prime.
You're put.
And the reason I'll listen to that and then listen to a couple of words after, just to make sure he's not repeating himself, if there's more stuff that I can get rid of other than just that so I'm not, I don't get rid of the and then listen and then get rid of that and then listen and then get rid of that. So I'm just listening to it all at once, at least the first couple of words.
You're putting some prime in the cylinders, you're pulling the mixture to idle cutoff, and then you're cranking the engine, and once it starts, then you push the mixture control back in to keep it running. But you're saying it's not that it fires and then dies, it's that it doesn't fire. So
It said it doesn't fire.
So this is purely a priming problem, has nothing to do with the servo. And from the symptoms, it just...
We'll keep the and.
And
maybe just that one, actually.
And, from the
symptoms, it just seems clear that this engine is being overprimed for some reason.
Primed for some reason. Most of
the stuff that I read about the 172S says, and the 172S, it's all D1000 stuff, so you're looking at glass display, right?
Right.
Right. Well,
and
some of the source gauges.
But
right. Well,
and
some of the source gauges.
But it basically says
for that first, but
it basically
gauges.
But and
some of the source gauges.
But it basically
says that you should prime it for 3 seconds. For 3 seconds. And I sort of have a feeling that. My guess is it's probably being primed for more than 3 seconds. But the symptoms you described
really. The symptoms
the symptoms you described really are consistent only with overpriming. It's just because that's the only thing that that would cause the engine not to start. And then if you wait a while, then you can start it. But if you don't wait a while, you won't get it started. That just sounds like it has to be overpriming, doesn't it? What about the part where the engine dies when at idle during taxi? That's after you started. It's been running. That's a different subject. The fuel servo has an idle mixture adjustment on it. It's the only adjustment on that servo. But it's like a star wheel kind of thing that you set.
Thing that you set. That you set.
The idle mixture.
The
idle mixture. And if you're having problems with the thing not idling.
With the
thing not idling properly.
Not
idling properly. Once it gets started, then it's a question of adjusting the idle mixture, and you're supposed to check it for an RPM rise as you pull a mixture to idle cutoff, and you should get something like a 50 RPM rise, something on that order. And if you're not getting a rise, then it means the idle mixture is too lean, and you have to. If you're not getting a rise, then it means the idle mixture is too lean, and you have to rich it up, which you can do by turning this little star wheel on the servo. The other thing that occurred to me
The other thing that occurred to me, because when
that would affect starting. The idle mixture doesn't affect it starting. It affects idle.
We probably don't even need this, Paul.
To me, because it went to the
but
same
that wouldn't
thing.
affect starting on the servo.
Get rid of that gap.
The servo, but that wouldn't affect starting.
The idle mixture doesn't affect it starting. It affects idle. But starting is done with a mixture idle cutoff, so the servo is not delivering any fuel when you're cranking.
There's a little
caveat in that this.
There's a little caveat. There's a little caveat
in that this being a gravity-fed airplane, if the airplane is sitting and there's a leak.
If the airplane is
sitting and there's leakage at the flow divider, sometimes you can have fuel in the cylinder, so it's basically a pre-primed engine. And then when you add priming to it, even if the minimal amount of priming, it suddenly gets overprimed. So if your flow divider is not doing a good cutoff, you can have something similar.
You can have some.
Ooh, a lot of reverb.
You can have
A lot of reverb with the
you can have
you can hear the coming through on this cut.
you can have
That's what that little blip is.
you can have something.
So
You can have
unfortunately we can't get rid of that.
You can have something similar in the start.
in the start.
Probably can't get rid of this either. Maybe we'll try and chop just the front of that word.
Something similar in the starting process.
All right, that doesn't sound too bad.
In the starting
Yeah,
process.
that doesn't sound
And if
bad.
it's not getting a good cutoff, it may give trouble setting your idle mixture as well. So they replaced the servo or overhauled that, but they didn't overhaul the flow divider.
And
So
so
you're focusing on the flow divider. Yeah, it's having a leak because it's
focusing on the flow divider.
Yeah.
So they replaced the servo or overhauled.
overhaul that, but they didn't overhaul the flow divider. And so you're focusing on the flow divider. Yeah, it's having a leak because that's interesting, and that could be a progressive.
Because it sits there.
That's interesting, and that could be a progressive disease that would get worse over time if the spring was
It's too weak, for example. Right. Yeah, or it's just getting weaker.
Yeah.
and
Or
it's just getting weaker.
yeah. So you've got
Example, and it was
No, we won't get rid of that.
and it was just getting weaker.
yeah. So you've got
Head pressure because the tanks are well above the engine. And we see this, you see it on 2T, I see it on a lot of different airplanes where you end up with fuel leaking out the induction vents because it's just dripping. And the solution is turn the fuel off. Interesting question is are you noticing any anomalies when you shut the engine down? When it's running and you pull the mixture out?
Off. Does the engine stop cleanly and immediately, or is there a tendency to run on for a while?
Chug. Yeah.
No, I can't say anything's been reported on the shutdown. It seems like once it gets started, everyone's pretty happy.
yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
No,
I can't say anything's been reported on the shutdown. It seems like once it
on the shutdown,
Try and get rid of that maybe.
on the shutdown.
Yeah.
it seems like once it gets started, everyone's pretty happy. Yeah. Okay. Well, I kind of like Paul's flow divider theory. That makes perfect sense. The servo wouldn't make sense, but the flow divider would make sense because it's what's responsible for shutting off the fuel. Yeah, cutting fuel off. When you pull a mixture control, it reduces the fuel pressure not to zero, but down to something below the threshold at which the flow divider is.
the threshold.
Threshold at which the flow divider spring is supposed to shut the sleeve valve in the flow divider. And that supports you said that it's been getting progressively worse, and that's an average over all students. I mean, if it was a student technique, it wouldn't be consistently getting worse, but the getting worse part sounded like something was degrading. And you've already checked the
No, it wouldn't be
Kind of repeats the it.
it wouldn't be consistent. It wouldn't be consistent.
consistently getting worse, but the getting worse part sounded like something was degrading. And you've already checked the servo, so the spring is quite a possibility. It would be interesting to go out and try a shutdown and see if you're still getting fuel dribbling in and it chugs a little bit before it finally stops on blade. And have you tried? When it doesn't start, do they do
When it doesn't start. When
it doesn't start, do they understand how to do a flooded start? Or do they just apparently they do that all the time? After all, they
after a while, that became the norm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so the mixture is all the way back and the throttle.
goes all the way forward, correct? Right. And does it start when they do that?
Became the norm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so the mixture is all the way.
Way back and the throttle is all the way forward, correct? Right. And does it start?
Right.
And does it start when they do that?
That was the remedy for a while.
And then even flooded starts when it's starting off. You might schedule a new starter replacement. But they're really exercising that starter, unfortunately. Well, hopefully they know that they're not supposed to crank it for more than 30 seconds so that letting the starter will cool down, right? Yeah, and then there's a 25% duty cycle. But I like your flow divider idea, Paul. I think that really...
I like your flow divider idea, Paul. I think that
really sounds like it might be the... I mean, you don't happen to have another 172S that you could steal a flow divider. They do. Just to... That's cool, yeah. So that's a real quick thing to do. Swap the two flow dividers and see if the problem moves to a different airplane. That's what we do on twins. So we have another airplane. We swap parts. I mean, we focused right on the fuel, and I think that was partially because he said that it starts fine or easier the first flight, but then when it gets warm, it's just too easy to overprime or have too much fuel when it's warm. I initially was focusing on ignition.
Ignition. I initially
was focusing on ignition. I saw you said 2,000 hours and hard to start or getting progressively worse sounded like an impulse coupling thing to me. But you said you replaced the mags or overhauled the mags. So the next question I had was, people are replacing the mags doesn't necessarily mean that they replace the impulse coupling. Okay, yeah, but probably. They're reporting the starting problem. Yeah. Okay, probably. And do you know if those engines start only on one mag or if they have one mag? It's the left mag, right? I thought they had two impulse couplings. Okay, sorry. Well, I'm always confused about that. I know Pipers usually only have one, yeah, but
Oh, they have.
Got most successes, but I don't know about the 172S, the newfangled one. So where I was going with that was people often think ignition, they try the plugs because that's the cheapest thing. They look at the mags and they often overlook the wires. And at 2,000 hours, the wires could be not doing well. And the question is, do you get any missing in the
You're talking about the ignition harness.
Ignition harness, yeah.
It sounds like everything was replaced
Except for that.
But
but the ignition harness and the flow divider.
Yeah, I would check the flow divider first. I think listening to everything, but there's more to the ignition than just the plugs in the mag. So I know this is going to sound terrible, but I would check the P leads as well. And they're playing with a high time. Those terminal ends may have been replaced over time. You could very well. Now
This is a stretch, you know. So I'm just thinking of things
that I've seen.
This is a stretch.
This is a stretch, you know, so I'm just thinking of things that I've seen that prevent airplanes from starting. But when you attach the P lead to the magneto, that terminal end needs to be bent up just a little bit, or it can possibly contact the outer part of that feed through capacitor and actually short it out. But then the engine wouldn't well, but now it's not starting at all, that's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Well, it's an
run once it
intermittent.
started.
He's
Well,
saying
but
it's-
now it's not starting at all. That's what I'm
Saying. I don't know, just something to easy thing like that. It's from starting, so yeah, it's possible, but I don't know, he's got lots of things to think about. But yeah, I like the flow divider. If it's an ignition problem, you know, it certainly can be the harness. At 2,000 hours, the harness probably getting a little longer too. That's been my experience. Don't tear down the engine for something. Yeah, for goodness sake. And the servo overhaul is probably not a good idea, sadly. I mean, yeah, it doesn't make sense given the way those engines start. If it was starting but not idling properly, then you maybe could think the servo was probably an adjustment on the servo, not a bad servo. But if the engine isn't catching at all, then that can't be a servo problem. But it could.
But if the engine but
If the engine isn't
if the engine is if the engine but if the engine
isn't catching at all, then that can't be a servo problem. But it could be a flow divider problem. If fuel is drilling into the cylinders continuously, even with a mixture pull idle cutoff, then yeah, that could certainly account for what's being seen. Yeah, that could certainly account for what's being seen. We have thought zero.
It's kind of a weird noise. It's not really a breath. Even if it is a breath, it doesn't sound like it is, so we're going to get rid of it.
seen. Being seen.
We had a
Makes
thought
sense.
to
Yeah, we also had a thought to check some of the fuel lines. You're not seeing fuel dripping out the low point drain on the injection system.
the fuel lines.
Looks like he was done talking, so I don't know what that was as if he had another point, but it looks like he was done talking. So we'll see if this makes
thought
sense.
to check some of the fuel lines.
You're not seeing.
Yeah. And we'll make it kind of seem like Mike is interjecting a little bit more.
Some of the fuel lines.
You're not seeing fuel dripping out the low fuel
Dripping out the low point drain on the injection system when people are starting, are you? No.
Has anybody watched for that? I wonder.
Not that I'm aware of.
Because most people run the other way when somebody opens the window and says clear. They don't stand around
you
looking.
don't hang around to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have suspected the fuel lines.
Yeah, a lot of extra work. I don't know. New fuel lines. Yeah, we replaced the
Yeah.
Probably a lot of extra work. But now you got new fuel lines.
Yeah, we replaced. Yeah, we replaced.
And we don't really need Paul's comments right there.
I don't.
But now you got
He doesn't finish it. So it's not worth keeping.
fuel lines.
Yeah,
we replaced the replacement fuel lines just to make sure that, on the suggestion that there was some contamination in there. Well, that would show up in the screen. The screen in the servo. In the servo, yeah. And that should be checked at every.
in there.
Well,
That would show up in the screen. The screen in the servo. In the servo, yeah. And that should be checked at every 100 hour, every annual. So if you were having debris coming from the fuel lines or the tank, that should have been discovered in routine inspections. If they're not checking that, they need to be checking that.
Little gap there.
if they're
If they're not checking that, they need to be checking that. Swap flow dividers. So try swapping flow dividers. I like that. So Albert, this falls in the category.
Swap flow.
that.
Swap flow dividers.
Just-
So try swapping flow dividers. I like that. So Albert, this falls in the category of you have to let us know what you find. Right, yeah. We expect a return email. We like easy and cheap fixes, and this one sounds like it could be. Okay. Sounds like we need to. Well, I don't know. Maybe Lycoming's very proud of that flow divider.
Sounds like we need to.
Well, I don't know. Maybe
Get
well, I don't know.
Replace
Maybe
more
maybe
parts.
Lycoming's very proud of that flow divider. I'm not sure.
this doesn't really make sense. I mean, he was going to keep talking, but Mike was talking over him, so.
Well, I don't know. Fixes and
This one sounds like it could be. Well, I don't know. Maybe Lycoming's very proud of that photo writer. I'm not sure how cheap that is, but I'm not sure. But it could be overhauled if you have to. No problem.
Mhm.
No problem.
Okay. Okay.
All
Well,
right.
okay, we'll throw some more parts of the problem, I guess.
No swap. You were swapping parts. That's different.
we're talking about stealing parts.
Stealing
we're not talking
parts.
about buying them.
Let's figure out how to do it. This is what we call a 5-finger discount. Oh gosh. Okay, well, do let us know, Albert. We want to get back. So, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks,
in.
Albert.
Perfect. All right, letters, or one letter.
Or experimental.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yep.
Well, great idea.
Yep.
That's a
Not
good
the
thought.
traditional pathway, but we'll take it.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple.
All right. No, we'll do a couple more clips. Couple more fade ins. Couple more fade outs. You know, do the hokey pokey. Fade it all about.
It's a
Maybe
tiny
it's a
airplane.
small
no doubt.
airplane.
it's not a twin.
Well,
Oh, it's a.
Hang on, I'm
It's
gonna
an
check.
Well,
RV.
if it's landing on lake beds, it's probably a smaller one.
Yeah. He uses aviation.
And we'll cut a lot of that stuff out. A lot of the cough and everything. We're just going through and fading.
All right, it's time for
Letters. We got a couple. The first one.
we've
Can we cut that? I don't know if we will be able to. Because the timing is going to be so close, I don't even want to move it this much. I don't even want to move this word even this much closer. You know, it's 13 thousandths. So I'm actually going to leave it there and then just fade this in and fade this out and fade this in.
letters. We've got a couple
And it's still,
for letters. We've got.
maybe we can move it.
All right, it's time for letters. We've got a couple. The first.
Well,
All right, it's time for letters. We've got a couple. All right, it's time for letters. We've got a couple. All right, it's time for letters. We've got a couple.
I think that works.
All right, it's time for letters. We've got a couple.
The first one is just some advice generally.
We've had a couple. We've had a couple of questions. we've had a couple of
questions about how to become a mechanic over the last couple of shows. And Nick listened and he said, hey guys, listen to the latest Ask the A&Ps podcast, and I think the best way currently to become an A&P is to get the light sport repairman certificate. And then in 30 months, you're able to take the A&P practical. So he basically says, do the light sport, work for a while, and then take the A&P later. So we discounted that a little bit on the show because unless you're working on LSAs, obviously there's no use. So we discounted that a little bit on the show because unless you're working on LSAs, obviously there's no use for it. So you go and work in a shop as a repairman on light sports? Yeah, how do you get the light sport? You have to pass a training course or something, right, to be a light sport? Is it 2 weeks? It's like a 2-week in-person course.
I think it says it 2. I think it says it 2 weeks. It's like a 2-week
in-person course or something like that. And I wonder who offers those.
Well, for a time, Rainbow
did, and Phil, I think it's Seabrook, right? Yeah, Phil did you do it as well? I think so, yeah. So but what would be, what he's suggesting, what Nick is suggesting?
Yeah.
So, but what would be, what he's suggesting?
What Nick is suggesting that is you get your light sport and then just go work on your own on light sports to get the experience. Because if you were working at a shop, that's no different than just working at a shop for 30 months. So this would be a way for an individual that's not working in a shop to get the experience. That's an interesting, yeah, seems like that would work. Yeah, a lot less expensive than going to school for 2.5 years. And the light sport people get a handy mechanic. May find out that their light's working on.
May find out.
Their light's working on light sports. Well, and I think the light sport is more of a problem, I think, than owners of normal certificated crap, because not that many shops work on light sport. Yeah, we don't. Or experimental.
Or
experimental.
Well, great idea. Yep.
Yeah.
It's not the traditional pathway, but we'll take it. Yeah. Okay, so a couple on the cleaning question.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so a couple on the
cleaning question. Oh gosh.
question.
Oh, jeez.
Oh gosh.
This is from Joe.
He said injustice. Got done listening to the OCD dentist.
He said,
Gotta pay attention to the breaths there. Because there's a breath before the and after the So
he said,
what I'm gonna do is, just to be safe, pretty much get rid of this breath on this clip.
Joe, he said, injustice.
Got done listening to the OCD dentist, which that's not fair. He was cool. I like the OCD dentist. On cleaning aircraft. I use several products on my aircraft that have worked incredibly well over the last 20 years. Number 1, Plexus for the windshield. Actually, yeah, I use Plexus too. Yep. Aircraft spray, wash, and wax.
Aircraft spray,
wash, and wax. It's manufactured by Boeing. He's insert joke here. It works well to do. Yeah. That may cause all kinds of other problems, though. Yeah, your wheel's gonna fall off. Yeah. He's the interior and exterior. So what's the name of the product? It's called aircraft spray, wash, and wax. It's like, but capital, proper nouns and all those. Yeah. And then he uses mineral spirits for the grease oil exhaust areas. Oh, greasy. Yeah, it is greasy. It leaves a film. Yeah, I like it so much. And he never uses water after.
And he
like it so much.
And he never uses water. And he
never uses water after clogging his pitot tube and spending the day drying stuff out. I just use a bucket of water. I don't spray the heck out of the airplane. I mean, spraying doesn't get the bugs off. The elbow grease gets the bugs off. But that's interesting. Yeah. So I got speaking of cleaning, I got an email. I'm going to lose who it was. But anyway, because I suggested we use a product called Crazy Clean. And Mike suggested, oh yeah, so I assume that starts with a K.
The elbow
grease gets the bugs off. But that's interesting. Yeah. So I got speaking of cleaning.
And I'm just raising up Ian's levels because I realized that I did not raise his up at all.
An email. I'm going to lose who it was.
I'm going to lose. I'm going to
lose who it was. But anyway, because I suggested we use a product called Crazy Clean. And Mike suggested, oh yeah, so I assume that starts with a K. And this person sent me an email or a text, I can't remember which, and said, so just so you know, if you use a K for crazy and clean, it's a toilet bowl cleaner. Let's not be using toilet bowl cleaner. If it's crazy clean, crazy is with a K and clean is with a C. Okay, that's really good to know. Nope. If both with a C, it's Evan cleaner. It's Evan cleaner, that's right. Yeah, no toilet bowl cleaner. Now is this crazy clean stuff yes. Yeah, so it comes in a spray can? Yep, comes in a can. Yep. Okay, Dustin wrote with a lot of recommendations, and you're going to see why I'm going to read you why.
In a can.
Get rid of some of this gap here.
In a can.
Yep.
Okay, Dustin.
Okay, Dustin. Okay, Dustin.
With a lot of recommendations, and you're going to see why I'm going to read you why these are good and important and why I trust his recommendations. He says, general clean. I clean my airplane using the, quote, waterless method. He says it does get dirty as I frequent many
He says
It does get dirty as I frequent many dry lake beds in Southern California. Before washing, I dust off the entire plane with a California car duster. Next, I use a product called Wash Wax All from Aero Cosmetics to spray an area, wipe it off with damp microfiber. He uses distilled water, and then gently buffs that area with a clean.
And then gently
buffs that area with a clean dry microfiber, and working in small sections, you can clean the entire airplane in less than an hour. He's fast.
He uses aviation simple green
for the belly.
Beds is probably a smaller one.
Yeah.
Is that like swallow kind of sound?
Probably a smaller one.
Yeah. He uses yeah.
That sounds good.
He uses aviation simple green for the belly. Or used to actually, but now he said he moves on to even
or used to
actually, but now he said he moves on to an even better product called Belly Wash. He said it's another one by Aero Cosmetics, but trust me, I don't work for them.
he said it's another one by Aero Cosmetics.
But trust me, I don't work for them. And it adheres to
Can't really get rid of this because it's like almost the same word.
He said it's another one by Aero
Cosmetics, but trust me, I don't work for them. It adheres to the surface and does not drip, which that's kind of nice. And then he sprays a little distilled water on it when he wipes it off, and when he's done, he puts on Wash Wax All.
And then he is sprays
A little distilled water on it when he wipes it off, and when he's done, he puts on Wash Wax All.
For the exhaust, he's got a Cessna 170. For the exhaust, he's
So he's got a Cessna 170. It's well known for having exhaust stains streaming back from its two stacks that extend from the front of the lower cowl. Yep. Friend gave me a bottle of, this is X-IT, carbon remover. Exit, I guess, carbon remover, to tackle the problem. The stuff is like magic for exhaust stains. I immediately bought a gallon and given much of it away to friends, and you have a product that cleans better than usual suspects. Okay, why do we trust this? From Spruce. He sounds smart. Oh, no kidding. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's in Southern California. And he cleans like in an hour? Yeah, no way. That's beautiful. Flying off lake beds? I mean, I'm like, whatever you're using, I want some of it. Because this man's fast. That's pretty... And that's Dustin. Yes. That's either fast or he has a very slow running clock. That's beautiful. We had a 170 when I was a kid, just for a little while. It's a beautiful airplane, isn't it?
As a kid, just for when I was a kid, just for a little while. It's a beautiful airplane.
Isn't it? Isn't it? Gorgeous picture. Yeah, that's okay. Spectacular. We got us on that one. Now we know why he's sensitive to the exhaust stains. Yeah. Very cool. Finally, just real quick, he uses damn window cleaner.
yeah.
Very cool.
Finally, yeah.
Very cool.
Finally, just real quick, he uses damn window cleaner
From McFarlane.
Very cool.
Finally, just real quick, he uses damn window cleaner
From McFarlane.
to
Yeah.
clean
Does
the
it have
windows.
an N at the end?
He likes that.
Probably.
No,
No, it's
D-A-M.
D period A period.
Oh. Probably.
No,
No,
D-
he likes that.
Probably.
No, it's
D-A-M.
D period A period.
Oh, I like damn better.
So
Yeah. Damn window cleaner. Interesting. Very cool. I'm gonna check up
Interesting. Very interesting. Very cool. I'm going to check up Exit. I like that.
That's a pretty airplane.
Is that a car product or an airplane product? Or I guess Google
let's see,
it, right?
he said exit.
He gets it from Spruce. Oh, Spruce. Okay. Yep, that's Spruce. So there you go. Awesome. A long time ago, I used to use oven cleaner on my...
I used to, a long time ago.
I used to use oven cleaner on my lower cowl to get those exhaust stains off, and then I had to repaint it. That's right up there with toilet cleaner. Well, you don't leave it on a really long time, and it did take the stains off, but... Yeah. Well, it took them off the airplane, but it left them on the paint, because when the paint fell off the airplane, the stains... If you really want to take the stain off, use Drano, but...
Yeah, I know.
All right. Letter is ready to go. We're on the last question. It's a fairly long one. And again, just going through, getting some of these clips faded in, faded out.
No.
All right.
Our next
Question is from Slavic, which is not actually his name, but we're going to be not pronouncing it incorrectly any worse than we can. Anyway, he's wondering when to break out the safety wire. Go ahead, Slavic. That's right. Hello, everybody. I'm a second time caller. So, wait, thank you again for your show. I'm a second time caller. So, wait,
So
thank you again for your show. This is like my story.
You can't say and then another
this is our.
I own two fixed-wing airplanes.
I own two.
Ooh, mouth.
I own two.
Like tongue click, the mouth noise. I hate that.
Two fixed-wing.
And I realize I'm probably doing it, but
Airplanes, but recently I've completed my.
Get off my back.
Congratulations! And I started taking.
And
I started taking helicopter flying lessons in school. So when I was doing preventative maintenance on my airplanes, I was always taught to safety wire oil filter. It's like a big thing, and
it's like
oh, they come through really harsh.
it's like it's a big
thing, and it's difficult and awkward to do that usually, but always taught
but usually but
always taught that's the rule. So long and short, I started taking.
Holy cow! He's speaking very quickly, but he's saying a lot of so it's kind of hard for me to pick up sometimes with these kind of speakers when I'm listening to double speed.
So long and short, I started taking helicopter lessons and part of the pre-flight.
These and sometimes I'll get rid of them if they slow the conversation or if they slow what the speaker is saying down enough.
And part of the pre-flight.
And I just got rid of that one just to show you, but
So I can secure the security of the oil filter, but there's no safety wire.
and sometimes the it's kind of hard to get rid of. Sometimes it's just not possible. So a lot of the times I just won't mess with it if it doesn't sound too bad. Just depends on the situation and the speaker and the context of the rest of the interview and all that stuff.
And it's just screwed on. It's a recording engine, just like on an airplane. And my understanding is helicopters actually vibrate, and the rate of vibration is much more severe. But it's not a concern for helicopters. Looks like that the oil filters would spin off and fall off. So my question is.
So my question is.
We can even get rid of this.
So my question is.
Do you need the safety wire oil filters? Yes. Were all the helicopters like that, or just that one? Are we unanimous? Yeah. Well, in the school, at least, FBO maintains the helicopters there. And two of them, actually there are more than two. I saw two Robinsons 22 and one Robinson 44. None of them have safety wires. Wow. Never have guessed that. I mean, the only thing I could think of, why don't you go talk to the director of maintenance and say that, that you're really curious about this, and you were thinking about asking the CISO about it, but he thought you'd ask him first. Yeah, you think nobody's going to be in trouble. I mean, I wonder.
I can't get rid of Paul's. Can't get rid of Paul's throat clear. We got to keep the guests laugh in there.
I mean, I wonder if the vibration frequency or something is
frequency or something is. I wonder if the vibration frequency
or something is different on a helicopter, and that's the reasoning why it still vibrates the heck out. Well, and it's also about temperature changes. I mean, because a car, you just tighten the living daylights out of an oil filter. The engine always goes to the same temperature, and it stays the same temperature.
Oil filter. The engine always.
Trying our best to get rid of that throat clear.
The engine goes to. The engine always goes. The engine always goes. The engine always goes. The engine always goes to the same temperature, and it stays as. The engine always goes to the.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Filter. The engine always
Goes to the same temperature, and it stays the same temperature all the time. But an airplane engine goes to significant extreme temperature changes. Wow, I cannot imagine not safety wiring an oil filter. But I can't also ever
an oil
filter. But I can't also ever recall any accident from an oil filter that came off. Yeah, that's true. But we do the drain plugs, we do the plug on the oil cooler, everything with the oil system is. No, we've seen a lot of accidents with oil hoses that weren't properly tightened. Or the sticks that were left off. Yeah, and oil filter adapters, those kind of things. But the oil filter itself, because we safety them. But this is a light combing. Can you picture a light combing that doesn't have provision for safety wiring in the oil filter? That doesn't. Well, there's a little loop that.
that's.
The oil filter? That doesn't make sense.
Well, there's a little
loop that's built into the accessory housing for the safety wire. It's built into the accessory housing for the safety wire. And because mechanics have this affinity for safety wire pliers, which I think should be taken away and thrown in the trash, because when you spin the safety wire, you
because when you
spin the safety wire, you pull. And you have to pull really.
Because when you spin the
safety wire, you pull. And you have to pull really hard, and it doesn't take long, and that little ear gets pulled out. And once it's gone, now you have to safety wire. You loop around the oil temperature probe or some other appendage on the back of the engine. And if people would just, Paul's obviously got something. I got a little
vendetta.
I got a little. Get up.
Vendetta.
I got a little. Would just.
Paul's obviously got something vendetta going.
I got a little.
I'm sorry. Nevertheless, yes, safety wire. So Paul is in favor of safety wire and opposed to safety wire pliers. Yes. So you got a half answer from half answer. Sorry. Aren't the safety wire pliers okay if you don't spin them? I mean, the thing that causes them to lock and clamp on the safety wire, that's a good thing, right? Well, except that the jaws. It's the spinning thing that. Yeah, so you can manually spin them, is what Mike's saying. You can clamp them and then just turn them. Nobody ever does that. I do that. But I also pull as hard as I can. Exactly. You're going to pull as fast as you can. And that little tab is missing.
And that little tab is missing.
And that little tab is missing on my cardinal. My safety wire pliers anyway are unidirectional, so if I have to turn safety wire in the reverse direction, I have to do it by hand. That's right. I get it.
Too. Sometimes I do.
So for me.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do.
So for me, of course. I'm
a weird guy. I safety wire by hand, and you don't have to pull really hard to make that happen. But also, when you clamp the safety wire pliers onto that wire, the serrations on the jaws damage the safety wire. Yeah, it does. I believe this is pretty close thing.
Not
always. Not always. No. I do it close in first, and then if we're talking about safety wiring, parts of propellers. Well, anything. Because you got to do the first spin, and then you loop it through whatever part you're safeting, then you do the second spin. Of course, these things never break. I get it. I'm just being that guy. But I safety wire by hand. So when you say you safety wire by hand, you mean you don't use any tools? Just I'll use safety wire pliers to cut it at the end. To cut it. You don't use his teeth? What about to curl it? You have to curl it through the hole. You do that I'll get it through the hole initially, and then I'll pull the pliers, but that's way off on the part that's definitely going to be thrown away. Show us all the scars on his hands. Hey, if you don't leave DNA on the airplane, you did not safety wire. Okay, well, you need to do a YouTube video on your safety wire. They wouldn't let us use safety wire pliers in A&P school. Good. But they also wouldn't let us use vice grips. As soon as I got out of there, I got a whole set of vice grips from Harbor Freight. And safety wire pliers. They probably didn't like to use JB Weld either, huh? No, they didn't. Slavic, I'm sorry. We've totally gone off rails here. Yeah, we all think your oil filters on the helicopter really need to be safety wired, and you have to have a chat with the director of maintenance about that. Yeah, definitely. Go have a discussion. Scary. I was always taught that helicopters are constantly trying to reject all their parts and the earth. That's why they're so ugly and they move around a lot. And that's how they fly, see? Yeah, that's how they fly. The earth repels them, or... Yeah, their parts are held together with a prayer. Well, we're happy that your oil filter didn't come off, despite the fact that it wasn't safety wired, but... It is apparently well tested. I would be nervous about that. I occasionally...
It is apparently it is apparently well tested.
I would be nervous about that. I occasionally leave safety wire off certain things. like the plug.
Certain things.
Like the plug that covers
The like the plug that covers, like the plug, like the plug that
covers up the adjustment on my turbo safety wire. I usually don't because I'm always futzing with it while I'm in the field. But oil filters are a big, massive thing. I've been adding safety wire, if anything. I've been safety wiring the bolts on my calipers, which I didn't used to do, but heck, they're easy to get to. And I've been safety wiring the screws and bolts that hold my wheel pants on my skybolt because I'm just tired of checking them on pre-flight and finding them loose, so I put drill bolts in. But it does seem to me that if it's something that if it unscrews in flight, it will cause the engine to fail. That's a pretty good argument for safety wiring. Yeah.
Whoops. Accidentally double clicked on that clip.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I agree. All right. Did
we help at all, Slavic? Go get him.
Did we help?
Oh. Try and come right in on that D. The D consonant sound, the hard D sound.
Did we help? All right. Did we help at all?
Slavic, go
That sounds
get him.
good.
Yeah, so to tell you the truth,
Yeah, so
to tell you
We have that kind of weird sound in the beginning, but we kind of need it. I kind of need it.
to tell you the truth, there's a aspect in my
Not a good cut there.
aspect
in my experimental helicopter.
the
Engine is from the automotive world. It's actually a derivative of the Volkswagen. What kind of helicopter is this? It's a rotary? Rotary, yes. Okay. So, as you can imagine, the oil filter for
oil
oil filter
for that for
for that engine comes from the automotive world, and it just doesn't have any provisioning for safety wire. Provisions for safety wire. There's no little tabs with little holes like on regular temperature filters. Well, don't drill a hole in the oil filter and use that as a safety wire hole. That won't work. Yeah. Well, the filter won't come off, but other problems will occur. That's a good point. I bet it's cheaper than an aviation filter. Oh yeah.
will occur?
That's a good point. I'll bet it's cheaper than an aviation filter.
Oh yeah.
Is this rotorway flying, or is it still in the process of being?
yeah it is flying, and it is just like it
All its little friends tell themselves rotorways that are built. Doesn't have safety wire for other oil filters. Well, if there are provisions for safety wiring, they should be safety wired. Yeah. You have that excuse for no wire. Yeah.
It's for no wire.
Yep.
That sounds
Yep.
that sounds like a really, really neat aircraft.
Mike's, Frank's. Yeah, it's going in his head.
Mike's cranks. Mike's cranks.
Yeah,
little
it's
cranks are
going.
turning in his head. Mike's cranks.
Yeah,
little
it's
cranks are
going.
turning in his head. Ooh, a helicopter. You have a helicopter rating, Mike?
No, I do not.
Oh, there you go. It's never
Float
too
plane.
late.
Float
Too
plane.
late.
Float plane, sailplane, no helicopter. Yeah, it's time to go get another rating. Go have some fun. All right, Slavic. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the question. Thanks for calling back.
All right, Slavic.
well all right
All right, Slavic.
well all right yeah thank you
Yep.
so much for
Thanks for the
answering.
question.
Thanks for
Very
calling back.
Interesting.
Good to see you again.
Good
Yeah.
to see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
All right, last question. Now just make sure the outro
Well,
sounds
that's it
good.
For another Ask the A&Ps episode. Hopefully we got a few things right this time around. Let us know what you think and keep sending us your tricky questions. You can email us at podcast@aopa.org. We'll see ya.
.org.
I like to keep this real quick.
.org.
We'll see ya.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Okay. Wow, I got everything edited. Now we just need to, I'm going to mix it first and then we're going to put it together. But I've been going for about an hour, so I'm going to take a quick break. All right. Let's get this thing mixed and ready to go. Luckily, shouldn't be too time consuming to mix this because I've got a lot of presets already ready to go for these guys. What I just did there was highlight everything. So Control A, went over to properties and just set all the clip gain back down to 0. So now everything is at what it was recorded. The level at which it was recorded, I should say. So let's make sure the vocals bus ozone 11 is turned on there. Let's pull up the loudness meter, which you guys can't see right now. You know what? I'm probably just going to keep this off screen. If you want to see my full mixing tutorial, then go ahead and check out my other full tutorial. There's timestamps in there, so you can just skip right to the mixing portion of it if you're curious how I usually do it. So let's add all of the presets I have. Paul New. What do we got? What do we got? Colleen, Sterling, Consolidated. Okay. So if you've seen my other tutorial, you'll know that instead of messing with all of the individual thresholds and every setting inside of all of my preset effects racks here, what I do is mess with the clip gain instead, so it's hitting the threshold at what I already have it set at.
Landing actually declared emergency and made a precautionary landing at an airport that was not his intended destination. It was a pretty good sized airport. And put his airplane in the shop there and asked them to explain that he had a rough. While we were borescoping your cylinders, we couldn't help but notice that 3 of your cylinders, not the number 2, but other cylinders have cracks in them. And so
The cracks theory.
So it's just okay. So finally, this guy, number 2, you want to pull cylinder number 2, would you send us the borescope images? So, and I particularly like to see borescope image of the piston crown, which is where you'd look for detonation. Well, we didn't take an image of the piston crown, but got images of the valves. You want to see those? Because the exhaust valve is just HT on cylinder number 2 was rising above 400 degrees. So he decided to make a precautionary landing. He actually declared emergency and made a precautionary landing at an airport that was not his intended destination. It was a pretty good sized airport. And put his airplane in the shop there and asked them to explain that he had a rough running engine and he was seeing high CHT in cylinder number 2, and asked them to investigate and to try to figure out what was causing the rough running engine, whereupon he rented a car and drove home because he had business meetings and stuff. So the shop called him and said, well, we borescope your cylinders. Cylinder number 2 definitely had detonation going on because the exhaust valve is completely white. And we're pretty sure that the reason, and gradually over time, we got more and more and more placards to the point where there wasn't any more real estate to put placards on. And at that point, the FAA invented this thing called Airplane Flight Manual and said, oh, well, we can put limitations in the Airplane Flight Manual. And the Airplane Flight Manual is a part of the POH for airplanes that were
But what would be what he's suggesting? What Nick is suggesting that is you get your light sport, and then just go work on your own on light sports to get the experience. Because if you were working at a shop, that's no different than just working at a shop for 30 months. So this would be a way for an individual that's not working in a shop to get the experience. That's thing. Yeah, seems like that. Use a product called Crazy Clean. And Mike suggested, oh yeah, so I assume that starts with a K. And this person sent me an email or a text, I can't remember which, and said, so just so you know, if you use a K for crazy and clean, it's a toilet bowl cleaner. So let's don't be affinity for safety wire pliers, which I think should be taken away and thrown in the trash, because when you spin the safety wire, you have to pull really hard, and it doesn't take long, and that little ear gets pulled out. And once it's gone, now you have to safety wire, you loop around the oil temperature probe or some other appendage. I safety wire by hand, and you don't have to pull really hard to make that happen. But also, when you clamp the safety wire pliers
right on the fuel, and I think that was partially because you said that it starts fine or easier the first flight, but then when it gets warm, it's just too easy to overprime or have too much fuel when it's warm. I initially was focusing on ignition. I saw you said 2,000 hours and hard to start or getting progressively worse. Sounded like an impulse coupling thing to me, but you said you replaced the mags or overhauled the mags. So the next question I had was,
replacing the mags doesn't necessarily mean that they replace the impulse coupling.
Okay.
Yeah,
I assume
but probably.
because they're reporting a starting problem.
Yeah,
but okay.
Probably.
But that was, people often think ignition, they try the plugs because that's the cheapest thing. They look at the mags and they often overlook the wires. And at 2,000 hours, the wires could be not doing well. And the question is, do you get any missing in the air?
You're talking about the
cruise?
ignition harness.
Now, what I'll go through is go through each caller on each question and adjust the gain for each individual question because they're all different. They all, have different microphones, have different voices, have different ways of speaking. So I'll just go through on each of their tracks and adjust the volume as needed.
Into a Cessna 150, and it's cool. It's a 1971 Aerobat with the 0200 in it. So when that came out, it had like an EGT that covered all 4 cylinders and oil temperature that was either green or not. And so it's evolved. My questions kind of evolved with all the new gauges out there that are on this. The key one that has frustrated me is the oil temperature sensor. And so I did some digging and some researching, and anyways, it would start flashing at me cautionary yellow if it was at 200, and then it would give me a warning at like 210 for the oil temperature. Initially the upgrade finally came back to me in November, and so I never worried about it until about March, when air temperatures were reaching 70 degrees, 60 degrees, and all of a sudden the oil temperature was getting what I can tell is normal temperatures from listening to you guys a lot. So anyways, I started doing some research, and the Continental manual for the 0200 says that normal operating temperature for the oil is 150 to 170 with a maximum of 225. And the POH says it's 240. And
Mike and Paul, thank you. On. So my questions are basically in 2 parts. One stems from Mike's articles in the AOPA Pilot Magazine covering the critical shortage, and a second article about owner preventive maintenance. So the first article, there was a telling story about a shop owner who was beleaguered because his schedule for annual inspections went out at least a year.
It sounds like
And he was-
Paul.
Yes.
and,
Sounds like
and he
my
was
job.
having trouble getting acute problems in. So for his regular customers. So the first question really stems from that, and that is, how did the FAA come up with the time interval between inspections for the aircraft? Was it empirical evidence? Did they have some kind of arbitrary, a year sounds good, it's easy to remember, it's like having your annual physical. If you do it around Christmas, you'll
Yeah.
Or was there political or even industry pressure to do that?
Well, David, I think you know the answer to that. There was obviously no empirical evidence. And
Is that true, Mike? I mean, or are we?
To something like, say, 18 months.
Mhm.
Or
And I know that Mike is not the best sounding. There's not a whole lot we can do there. All these, it would get really, really complicated if I separated every single person onto a different track. So I just try and generally make all of them sound pretty good together. And I know that doesn't sound quite perfect, but it's over the internet. I think people understand that. It's as good as it can get right now, I think.
We've got a Cessna 172S running out of a flight school, and it was acquired a couple of years ago, and it was always a little bit difficult to start. Everyone would say that it would flood very easily, but eventually it would. And the first start of the day was easier than the subsequent starts of the day. The first flight was always out with some difficulty, and then every other flight after that just got harder and harder to start the plane. And, as I mentioned, it would flood very easily. It seemed like it would flood very easily. And this went on for months and flood very easily. It seemed like it would flood very easily.
Don't really need that, do you? Missed that in the editing.
Flood very easily. And
Oops.
It just got progressively worse and worse to the point where even when it was just taxiing around on the ground, it would sputter and eventually die. And there was one time when a student got stranded on a cross-country mission, and because on the taxi back, plane died and he couldn't get it restarted. So at some point we had to start throwing some mechanics at it. For the 172S model, fuel injected, we have them prime it with the fuel pump, and then on the startup, give the throttle just a little bit of a crack, a little bit, maybe half. And then as it cranks, once it catches, gently put the mixture forward. That's pretty much it. Nothing too complicated.
And what are their instructions for priming?
That one is.
And he said, "Hey guys, listen to the latest A&Ps podcast, and I think the best way currently to become an A&P is to get the light sport repairman certificate, and then in the light sport repairman certificate, and then in 30 months you're able to take the A&P practical." So he basically says, do the light sport, work for a while, and then take the A&P later. So we discounted that a little bit. So because unless you're working on LSAs, obviously there's no use for it.
So
But
you'd go.
listening to the OCD dentist, which that's not fair, and the PhD discourse, I know, on cleaning an aircraft. I use several products on my aircraft that have worked incredibly well over the last 20 years. Number one, Plexus for the windshield. It's actually
I
that's
use
the brand name.
I use Plexus
Yep.
too.
Yep. aircraft spray, wash, and wax.
Everybody, and I'm a second time caller now.
Oh, okay.
So again for your show, I really love it. And this is sort of my story. I own 2 fixed wing airplanes, but recently I've completed my helicopter, like a kit helicopter.
Oh, congratulations!
Very cool.
And I started taking helicopter flying lessons, like in a school. So when I was doing preventative maintenance on my airplanes, I was always told.
All right, that looks pretty good. Like I said, I already have all of the presets ready to go, so mixing with this one doesn't take me super long. If you want to see the full process on how I built that effects rack and how I use the philosophy to set all the thresholds and everything, go ahead and take a look at my other tutorial video. But now we will go ahead and put this whole thing together and get it finalized. Bring in the music here. It was done by yours truly.
Hi, I'm Mike Bush.
I'm Paul New.
And I'm Colleen Sterling. Welcome to Ask the A&Ps from AOPA.
And you can see I have the marker here where I always bring the clip in, where I bring the first, where I bring Mike's voice in.
On Ask the A&Ps, we try to tackle your toughest maintenance questions.
So the timing is the same throughout each episode. And then we just need the little transitional stingers. Between each question and letter and stuff like that. And it's the same thing. I have a marker right where I always bring in the voice.
Our first question is from Mike, who is frustrated with a feature in his engine monitor. I can't wait to hear this one.
And then we just continue to cycle through these 3 transitional stingers. Bringing in each question as we go. And finally bring in the outro. And then the outro has, it's the same song, but it's a little bit of a different version. It is like a longer version of the same song. And I'll usually do a little bit of a fade in there.
Podcasts at aopa.org.
We'll see ya.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Sounds good. Actually quiet that down a little bit, which actually I'll do that right inside the clip. Minus 1.5. So now we know for next time it will be that much quieter. All right, there we have it. There is a full ready to go episode of Ask the A&Ps. This, like I said, this was a lot more complicated than your usual, maybe 2 people interview podcast. But it looks really nice when it's done. It's very satisfying. And I will get this thing exported, and that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. And if you need any help with your podcast editing, if you want to just talk about podcast editing, hit me up. You can head to ieditpodcasts.com, or you can shoot me an email at matt@ieditpodcasts. Or if you're just looking for help for your podcast, and if you are looking for some editing done, then I'm there for that too. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Well, that was a shitty outro, but